Welcome back to the channel. This is Freddy Storm and you are watching second part of What If Naruto Defeated Danzo to become Hokage. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
If one word could adequately characterize Danzo, it would be devious. The man was cunning and brutal. He is extremely devoted to Konoha's military might, which proved to be the strongest among the elemental nations during the First Shinobi World War. Why wouldn't it be the case? The two most powerful clans founded the village tucked away in the leaves prior to the creation of what would later be known as Fire Country. This, combined with Fire Country's abundant agricultural, fishing, and other resources, had made the country a formidable force to be reckoned with. Danzo saw the Sandame's teachings as being overly diplomatic and forgiving, and he wanted to hold onto that authority. In his view, conflict could not be resolved without appropriate military intervention. He knew that killing was a necessary evil because he had witnessed and participated in war, and he would gladly kill again to keep Konoha at the top. It was important to remember that the Shodem and Naidame, or Hashirama and Tobarama of the Senju, were the sources of the Sandame's teachings, and that Hiruzen's successors also adhered to their principles. These Konoha leaders, from Minato to Naruto, were and still are unquestionably the brightest of their era. The villagers and ninja alike quickly came to follow these three leaders because of the impressions and personalities they each left behind. Following the Third Shinobi War, Minato was regarded as the best in Konoha. The fourth Hokage could not have been compared to anything or anyone. He was a shining example of what a true shinobi ought to be. That accounted for the public's affection for him and their almost fanatical devotion to him. But Danzo was not persuaded of this, not even with the Yondaime. After the Third War, Danzo saw the Yondaime as weak, willed fools who had adopted the ideologies of his rival and were unable to take advantage of the sanctions imposed on Earth Country, potentially eliminating the threat of the Yondaime once and for all. Because of this, he was not given the opportunity to take over as Hokage from Danzo. Instead, he had to go to war shortly after the Yondaime had sealed the Kyuubi into his own son. Shikaku had been wondering why Danzo felt the need to take matters so seriously and what had crossed his mind. In just 5 days, the Rokudane was away. Why couldn't he have taken the seat? Perhaps that was where the old Warhawk had begun to plot his strategy. Though he was unsure of how other nations would respond, he was certain that if Danzo succeeded, Konoha would suffer as a result. An attack on a cage in front of 5 other cages, he doubts, would be very foolish. Danzo ought to have understood that. Or was it that, after years of putting up with the Sandame and Godaime's rule, the man had finally lost patience? Shikaku had no desire to find out and would never know. He believed that Danzo had turned criminal and that there was nothing more to be said about the man who had been secretly scheming. Seated atop the tallest structure Yamato had constructed, Shikaku intended to watch the impending skirmishes. As he stopped, he noticed Yamato and Naruto's former classmates standing quite a distance away by the northern gate. Then, Yamato asked the Chunin who were with him, "Do any of you trust me?" As he quickly started weaving his hands into a number of seals. While they all nodded, Yamato just grinned. "Then don't move for a second, Kiba. San, Lee. San and Tenten. San. You three will serve as the strike force, I'll provide the distraction." After finishing his barrage of seals, Yamato cried out, "Mokuton. Daijiren no Jutsu. Wood release. Great forest technique." Wooden pillars rose from the earth, sending Kiba, Lee, and Tenten skyward. They all turned to face one another as the remaining pillars started to weave together and ascend, some of which bent and started to attack the northern gate below. The moment the pillars started to fire at them at an incredible pace, the root operators instantly broke formation, and Yamato could be seen panting below. The Anbu captain nodded to the rest of Naruto's friends and muttered, "The things I do for my village." After taking a deep breath, "Shoji. San, I want you to use your Baika no Jutsu, multi-size technique, and serve as artillery while the others get to their work. Shino. San, I want you and Ino. San to serve as backup and you are to engage when you feel the need to, especially Ino. San, since she is our medic in this field. Under any circumstance, don't intercept the ninja unless they are blindsided." The 5 members of Root regrouped and started climbing the twisted wooden poles like a ramp as the onslaught of wooden pillars came to an abrupt stop. As the 3 Chunin up at the summit of this wooden square structure started to get ready, each member was dashing on their own pillars. Li raised his right hand and exclaimed, "Now, let us burn with our flames of youth and drive these people out who threaten the fire of our village." Kiba, riding his devoted companion Akamaru, grinned and said, "Well boy, looks like we're going to have to party." Tenten rolled her eyes to the Inuzuka's right. It was so typical of men. She reached for a tiny scroll and opened it to reveal a kusarigama and another scroll with a nodashi inside. Kiba jumped as he exclaimed, "Yahoo!" Tenten leapt as she landed on one of the pillars, saying, "Whatever, stop dawdling and let's get this over with." Once again, Kiba was running alongside Akamaru at the same speed as his dog, who barked in agreement as they leapt below. Li leapt and somersaulted too, landing on the wooden ramp at the bottom of the slope as their speeds were increased by gravity. They felt as though they were free-falling at such speeds with the wind rushing to their faces, their hearts racing and adrenaline pumping as they dashed downward with the pull of the Earth's gravity below. In the center, one of the root members sealed the deal by putting his hands together. Ninpo. Enmaku, ninja art, smokescreen. It didn't matter to Kiba, who was soon enveloped in smoke, speaking out of the middle person's sleeve, "You can't get away." Giju Ninpo, Shikyaku no Jutsu. Beast mimicry ninja art, 4 legs technique. The boy squatted down to Akamaru's level and dashed on his limbs, causing Kiba and Akamaru to dash even faster as soon as he applied the jutsu, fairly marking his side of the column with scratches. Then, 2 members, who were wearing masks exactly like the one who started the smokescreen, jumped out of the smoke. As they lunged at him from above, Kiba could smell their scent. Kiba and Akamaru spun like drills to avoid being attacked by the 2 elite members. Gatsuga. Twin piercing fang. Kiba came to a screeching halt as the 2 clones completely stopped their attacks. Suddenly, another member emerged from underneath the wood, popped out of the mentioned structure, and nearly sliced Kiba's head off. Fortunately, Kiba ducked in time. Then, a massive choji materialized behind Kiba, gathering chakra in the palms of his hands and using them to throttle Kiba's area, saying, "Chaurite." Mega palm thrust. The piece in front of Kiba shattered, sending the Anbu wearing the cat mask plummeting to the ground. Kiba turned to face Akamaru, who had regrouped after the Anbu with the shadow clones had lunged at him earlier, Shugetsu. Rising Moon. The root operative's clones slashed sideways at Kiba with their swords from the center. Kiba dodged and stopped instantly upon witnessing the cat masked Anbu appear below, preparing to deliver a rising vertical slash. Rolling to his side, Kiba detected the scent of Akamaru at the top of the clones. And with that, the fanged boy straightened his legs and shot straight upward. Then, Kiba reappeared, this time with Akamaru at the top, and this time, both the familiar and the master started spinning like drills, eventually blending together. Tensuga. Heaven Twin Fang. The 2 ambushed the 3 shadow clones, dispelling the 2 clones and using the drill to launch a massive drill like attack that easily rivaled that of the Garuga, Twin Wolf Fang. Then, as the attack nearly started to delve further into the hole that the 2 had made, the enormous drill sent the Anbu crashing to the ground with a loud and nauseating thud. Alongside Li. When the 3 of them sprinted down, Li was already getting ready to take off his leg weights and undo his bandages. He threw them to the root member who was perched on his pillar, and the man ducked to see the objects fall, creating a small crater in the ground and gathering a considerable amount of dust below. With a swift turn of his head, the Anbu saw that Li was about to deliver a straight flying kick. The man's elbow arm padding, though, parried Li's forceful entry. Li leapt and returned to land on the wood column with a somersault. Beneath his lizard mask, the man scrutinized Li closely. At first, the man appeared motionless, but then his hands briefly twitched together. Without any delay, Li saw the man complete his jutsu and unleash a Gukaku no Jutsu directly towards him. Li dodged the fireball by jumping. The elite root member approached him as he was passing by, daggers blazing from his hands. Li dodged the man's blades by kicking his forearms, controlling his flight to land directly in front of the man. Not just any expert, but a true Kaiden expert was the root member he was up against. The man appeared to be able to wield a Kaiden weapon at close range with sufficient effectiveness. He held onto his dagger while his chakra turned to flames. Kaiden. Sukoenga, fire release, twin tiger blaze fang. But after Choji began to stir things up with his Chaurite, Li noticed the man became momentarily sidetracked. Swiftly seizing the opportunity, Li quickened his pace, and in an instant, the distance between him and the man was reduced. Lee then delivered a sharp blow to the man's chest, causing him to wince in pain. The man faltered, but he steadied himself and spun around, holding his daggers in his hands. The flames shot in a broad arc, nearly grazing Lee's cheek and his flak jacket. Lee swore silently under his breath at the searing pain shooting through his cheek and abdomen. The man then came to a stop, spun the dagger in his left hand in a reverse grip, and thrust his daggers forward directly at Lee, who then jumped again and spun around, elbowing the man in the left elbow and driving a knee into his stomach. The man staggered back. Konoha Senpuu. Leaf Whirlwind. The man used his forearm to block, but after his kick was parried, Lee reversed course. Lee wasn't finished yet. He grabbed the man by the elbow, disarmed him, and spun around, doing the same to his left, before delivering a straight kick to the chest. He used the block's stopping power and then reversed his spin, going for a low sweep kick that made the man fall. As he pursued the man, Lee leapt down and his bandages came off, causing them to come off even more. Hachimon Tonku, Daichimon, Kaimon, Kai. 8 gates opening, first gate, limit gate, open. He felt the bandages unfurl and wrap around the Kaiden user, whose weapons were obviously off his hand, and felt the limiters in his muscles and chakra break away. After making it to the individual, Lee started holding him by the waist while the Anbu member's bandages formed a cocoon around him. At that moment, Lee started to spin around like a top, getting faster and faster until they resembled a tiny tornado. Lee forced the man below to the ground, causing the wind currents to pick up speed. Omet Renge. Primary Lotus. Whack. In conjunction with Tenten. With his sword drawn, Tenten threw her Kusarigama at the root member, who easily sidestepped the sickle. Tenten then withdrew the Kusarigama's chain, but the man continued to avoid it. Then, as the sun gleamed and shone down on Tenten, drawing her into his delusion, the man quickened his pace, heading straight for her at such short notice, sword raised in front of him. Megan. Shiranui, demonic illusion, phosphorescent light. Tenten saw what looked like a dancing ball of light at that precise moment as the man's image twisted into a wavy pattern, circling her vision and playing tricks on her senses. As Guy had trained her, Tenten was a long-range expert who had advanced in her weapons training since the invasion of the Sand and Sound, so she was never particularly skilled in genjutsu and wasn't particularly talented in that area on her own. In addition, genjutsu would probably make her weapons training more difficult in her field. She had to undergo hours of training in every subject she studied because she was taught to become proficient with any kind of weapon. With swords, axes, and spears, there was already too much to handle. Tenten's right hand held an odashi, which she used to block the white light that appeared to dance and flicker in her eyes. She heard the high-pitched sound of metal hitting metal, felt a sharp pushing force push her from behind, felt her feet lose the surface they were meant to stand on, and her vision became blurry. The only sound she heard was ringing, which sounded like a high-pitched tune that was going to burst her eardrums. The ringing kept vibrating in her ear. Her senses and visions abruptly stopped when a single, distinct sound snapped her out of her reverie. The wisp, as she called it, began to flicker and dance toward the top of her head. Whack. Just as she snapped to awareness, she heard a loud smacking sound beneath her and saw the wood breaking apart and the Anbu Black Ops agent falling toward her. Looking around, she saw a splinter of the wooden frame that Yamato had constructed falling very near to a wooden platform she could see just to her right, only to be destroyed by a giant palm from Choji. Fixing her downward trajectory, she landed on her feet on the descending pile of wood, using it as a plank to jump to the platform. She then swung around the enormous symmetrical tree blocks, gathering chakra at her feet, and wedged herself on a piece of wood that was completely perpendicular to the ground. She was being pursued by the ninja wearing the owl mask that had previously created the illusion for her as he dove and jumped through the wooden blocks. Tenten released her hold on her Kusarigama and proceeded to seize several kunai, each of which had a bomb node attached to its ring. As she started to run and leap through the enormous coils of symmetrical wood, she bit the nodashi on the flat part of her blade. She then fired explosive kunai after explosive kunai at the Anbu, who seemed unfazed by the impact even though he was dangerously close to the highly explosive daggers. The operative didn't appear to be deterred as a kunai exploded on his back only centimeters from his mask. The man was cunning. He increased his speed after the impact and got closer to the kunoichi. Tenten cursed her luck and used her teeth to grip the handle of her nodashi to protect herself from the man. Below, Tenten and the man were slamming swords at each other, and the sound of their blades striking could be heard. The man kicked her in the abdomen as she staggered back, but not before she threw a small scroll at him, unfurling it to reveal a shield pattern that had been stored inside. Then, with her hand raised in a half-ram seal, Tenten unfurled a small globular object that appeared to be adhered with many kunai. Inside was a tiny explosive node that was ready to detonate. The explosive node detonated, causing the gunpowder in the ball to ignite and release countless shrapnel fragments. Another loud explosion was heard. The Anbu member felt his chakra losing its hold on the wooden structure, causing excruciating pain that made it feel as though he was losing his footing. The root member was staring up when he saw a huge pole, no, a tetsu bow, being thrown at him before he hit the ground. After that explosion, Tenten had run for cover when she realized the man had been caught off guard. Tenten saw the man emerge from the explosion with several kunai pierced through his chest and abdomen, and realized that he had a chance to end the fight. She made a leap that would be regarded as a leap of faith, unfurling another small scroll and revealing a tetsu bow. She clamped the weapon down tight and held it between her palms. And then, as they started to descend, she swung the heavy object straight at the man with its tip. The weapon had struck the root member squarely in the chest, sending them even lower. With a loud crash, they hit the ground, her victim crushed beneath the weight of the weapon, causing tiny fissures and cracks in the earth beneath them. With a sigh of relief, she turned to look at Kiba and Akamaru, who were resting in the shade of the wood, while Lee was looking skyward. Something seemed to be missing all along. To their astonishment, a second member had materialized at the summit with the intention of killing Choji right there on the forehead. As the winds picked up, his sword had begun to glow blue from his chakra. Fuden. Ama no Furyuken, Wind Release, Wind Dragon Sword of Heaven. A jagged blade of chakra was ready to descend upon Choji as it started to expand. Choji, taken aback by the abrupt appearance, was unable to dodge in time. Tenten, Lee, and Kiba watched as their friend was about to be sliced in half, but then they noticed that the man was suddenly encircled by a large number of insects. Hijutsu. Mashidama, Secret Technique, Insect Sphere. I am sorry, I am late. My timing was a little off. With his back to the enemy and his hands tucked into his pockets, Shino had materialized on top of the wooden structure in an instant. He was completely covered in his own insects, not even a strand of hair showing. I have intervened as I had deemed necessary, per Yamato Taiko's instructions. He then declared in a monotone voice, "You, who threaten the life of our comrade, shall suffer the wrath of my insects by 1,000-fold, while holding his right hand open near to his face." He then closed his right hand into a fist, causing the man's chakra to completely vanish as he fell to the ground, his insects gradually returning to their sleeves. With a sigh of relief, Choji dispelled his technique and staggered back. It was his third experience of feeling as though he might not survive. He was grateful to have someone like Shino on his team because it had been that close to being cut in half. Below the tree, Ino had made her way through all of them, inspecting each one for wounds. Yamato, who was sitting beneath the tree's shade to her right, signaled the start of the initial strike. All they had to do now was wait for the remaining Konoha shinobi to deal with the remaining root issue. The tent of Tsunade. Shizune, Genma, and Aoba were anxious. The battle had only lasted for a few minutes. Additionally, the residents would have returned inside by now after seeing the signs. Shizune was by the Godime's side, tending to her needs while Genma and Aoba were outside. Shizune was tense because she couldn't concentrate because she knew the enemy could attack at any time. With concern for his caregiver, Taunton was by her side. Shizune had sat down next to her master and petted her pet pig. The sounds of explosions resounded through Konoha's skies, and she could also hear the footsteps of numerous other ninja who had started to scurry around, searching for any signs that Danzo's forces might be preparing to attack the Godem. Outside, Genma had his hands by his sides instead of in his pockets, holding his senbon between his teeth like a toothpick. He was cautious, and rightly so, these were skilled fighters they were facing. When Yamato led them and their numbers were greater than those of the people in the northern gate, Yamato's squad had the upper hand. In order to prevent confusion, he had witnessed nearly every Anbu member remove their mask and start searching the area. Though they behave similarly to Anbu supporters, Root Ninja don't reply to messages unless they are related to the mission. Nothing was more important to them than the assignment they had been given. He noticed Aoba, to his right, adjusting his sunglasses with tension. Like Genma, the man was cautious. These are Secret Service agents. When faced with a task, they often exhibit extreme brutality. It was the reason Root was so incredibly effective at what they did. However, they also had the fewest new hires. Many of the ninjas placed in Danzo's training program were abandoned kids who had no intention of attending the academy. Here, Danzo and his henchmen would brainwash the kids into forgetting everything about their names, their histories, their ages, their hobbies, and much more. It seemed inhumane to Aoba. These individuals were taught to kill with no feeling at all, not even a palpable sense of guilt. Aoba was thinking when he saw 3 ninja approaching them. Genma's teeth tightened as he saw the 3, who had a hollowed out expression on their faces. Aoba tensed significantly. Shizune had shown up at the tent's entrance just in time. She had shut the curtain that led to Tsunade's chamber and was announcing to the ninja in front of her that, "You will not get past this point from this moment on." Then, with her right sleeve up, Shizune showed off a pair of Senbon shooters that gleamed in the sunlight, emphasizing their deadliness in front of the 3 emotionless ninja in front of them. Unbeknownst to the 6 fighters, a boy's silhouette crouched behind Tsunade's tent, and a small black rat materialized inside, sniffing around the cramped space. Iron Nation. The samurai from the team, who leapt into the chaos, had driven him to this spot. As the wave of swordsmen started chopping down Root members left and right, who were using the woodlands as a shield, the samurai divided into different directions, determined to eliminate every last usurper. This whole situation started when one of the extremely hostile samurai pulled Shikamaru into this desolate wooded area, drawing him into the sudden gush of battle. Shikamaru straightened up on a tree branch and cast a sideways glance, snatching a quick glimpse at a group of Root shinobi. Withdrawing 2 smoke bombs from his backpack, the indolent tactician turned to face his opposite side and inhaled deeply. Shikamaru's physical prowess was not appealing to these people. He is not strong enough to outmatch Choji and Naruto, he cannot outrun someone like Lee or Kiba, and he cannot even strike as quickly as Neji. Shikamaru thought it difficult to put any effort into his physical training. Rather, he concentrated on letting his thoughts do the heavy lifting, creating formulaic schemes that catch a lot of people off guard. Almost all of his opponents cooperate with him whenever he employs such clever strategies. One person. Momentum. Shikamaru sighed once more. He had been clearly at a disadvantage earlier, and he had only been able to initiate the Kage Nui, shadow needles, at a closer range than he had felt comfortable doing so because of his allies. If there was nothing to illuminate the area, his shadow techniques would be pretty much useless. Taking hold of one of Asuma's old trench knives, Shikamaru tightly gripped it with his free arm. While the trio of ninjas started searching through the lifeless frost of a woodland, Shikamaru squatted down and started reflecting. Guerrilla warfare in heavily forested areas are ideal situations for this kind of warfare. Simple enough strikes that would eventually slow down the opponent for easy pickings. Shikamaru lacked the motivation to employ such tactics in this situation, and since he was unable to use his shadow techniques, his only remaining options for taking out these assassins would be to use his ningu and trap. Making specialties. Yep, restocking is a bitch before an emergency mission. The list included 15 shuriken, 5 kunai, 10 meters of ninja wire, a flash bomb, 2 smoke bombs, and 20 kabaku fuda explosive notes. Shikamaru got up then, because he had taken another cigar stick from his former teacher's remaining stock. This time, he put one in his mouth, lit the cancer stick with a lighter, and let the nicotine fill his lungs. He now understood Asuma's addiction to this. For some reason, smoking always helped him to stress. With smoke bombs still in his grasp, the youthful strategist dashed ahead, ultimately opting to implement his plan. Ambush is out of the question. With my limited skills, I'm not stupid enough to do that. Guerrilla tactics it is. After carefully wrapping an explosive note by its handle with one of his kunai, Shikamaru started to follow the 3 Root agents who had just passed by him and divided them into 3 groups. While keeping a safe distance, Shikamaru flicked the kunai out of his hand and threw it into the area where one of the operatives was. There was a small, loud thunk as the kunai struck a tree trunk. As it became ingrained in the tree, the ape mask-wearing Root member peered at the kunai that had exploded out of nowhere, knocking him sideways with the first shockwave. After turning to look back, the operative pursued the person he believed had fired the kunai. After throwing the first kunai, Shikamaru attached 3 explosive notes beneath the branch he was standing on. Then, after hiding beneath the bushes, he leapt below, retrieved 4 shuriken from his pouch, and repositioned to get a better angle to aim the throwing stars. After the participant touched the branch he had created, Shikamaru put his hands together in a ram seal motion, and the 3 explosive notes detonated instantly, sending a loud boom reverberating through the forest. Then the root operative collapsed, surfacing from the black smoke billowing from the burnt tree remnants overhead. Observing that the man was now blindsided as he came down from the freefall, Shikamaru flicked the 4 shuriken out of his pouch and threw a kunai. As predicted, the man's limbs were embedded with 4 shuriken, and the kunai was slicing through his throat. Shikamaru believed he had a good chance of doing that. He anticipated that a player such as Tenten would attempt such a challenging shot. However, he believed that his ningu usage wasn't all that bad. Before those 2 members could jump him at that precise moment, Shikamaru leapt out of the frame and flicked a smoke bomb to give himself more time to decide how to attack the 2 members who were still pursuing him. 1 down. When the 2 operatives arrived, the area was covered in smoke. Upon seeing their comrade's lifeless body, they checked on him and looked all around. The windpipe has been pierced, based from position that he had fallen in the angle of the kunai. The enemy has taken a southwest route. The 2 ninja had vanished from view with that. Then Shikamaru moved over to the more wooded area and started executing his plan. This would be much easier than he had imagined, now that one of them was out of the fight, and if all else failed, he could always take a little chance with the flash bomb. He set about weaving trap after trap around a small area using his ninja wire and 15 explosive notes, but before he could finish, Shikamaru took one of the 3 kunai that were still in his pouch and planted it atop the branches above. For once, it was a good thing there was no light source because otherwise, the shadow of that kunai might have been crystal clear. Shikamaru leapt away as soon as he had completed fastening the wires to the top of the kunai, allowing the wire tension to reach its maximum. All of his remaining tools were a flash bomb and 2 kunai and 11 shuriken, and he had not yet used any jutsu. Shikamaru's boundless tolerance appeared to be wearing thin. It was very tough and frustrating for him to be at such a disadvantage. Then Shikamaru turned to face a corner, slashing one of the trees with his kunai. Shikamaru understood that this mark would be viewed by them as a ruse, which was what the pineapple-headed Chunin had intended for them to believe. Later on, Naruto will owe him a great deal for this. He deliberately let himself get in the way of the root agents for the first time as soon as he let his trap go into action. Shikamaru leaned forward slightly and soon ran like the devil himself was chasing after him, finally making his tracks visible. After the operatives eventually found the actual tracks that the Chunin had left behind, they quickly raced forward, following the Nara's trail. When they finally caught up to Shikamaru, he threw 4 shuriken, which the 2 masked ninja easily deflected. Once the 2 agents entered the area covered in a layer of gray smog caused by the smokescreen, Shikamaru took out his last smoke bomb and threw it to the ground. Then, leaping out of the smoke, Shikamaru let go of 8 shuriken from his hands without waiting for anything. He heard the sounds of several tension wires being successfully severed, which caused the wires to spring and lashed out like whips towards the smog blanket, which waved in the air and bound the operatives like a snake. After the smoke cleared, Shikamaru saw that the binding tap he had made was only holding 1 person. Shit. Then Shikamaru turned to face the Anbu, who had his sword raised and was already on top of him. With 2 kunai left in his pouch, Shikamaru threw them at the man before leaping back to reveal 3 more shuriken and hurling them at the last root member who was still on the move. With no more ningu at his disposal, his jutsu too close for him to execute the next move, and the man he had trapped in his trap ready to escape, Shikamaru cursed his bad luck. Then, with his right hand raised, Shikamaru created a half-ram seal. The member then turned to look down as sparks and flames started to eat away at the paper, producing a hissing sound from the explosive notes. A tiny crater bore witness to the 15 explosive notes that detonated simultaneously, and as each explosive note devoured itself whole, a loud explosion echoed through the dense forests of Iron Country, eliminating every man and leaving only charred remains. Shikamaru took advantage of this brief diversion by holding Asuma's trench knives and then hurling them to the man who leapt away. Shikamaru, never one to give up on a wager, then threw his last remaining tool behind his back. A detonation bomb. As the bomb made contact with a small tree, it detonated, unleashing a dazzling white light that caused the last operative in Shikamaru's line of sight to shield his eyes. In that instant, Shikamaru had finished shaping his chakra and engaged his Kage Nui. The man was blinded when the Shadow Needle's branches reached through the trench knives and began to spread out. They eventually impaled the man on every possible part of his body as they rose upward and ascended like grass blades. Shikamaru sighed in relief as the man collapsed, limping. The tactician slumped onto the forest and looked up, wishing that times had been easier when they were younger. Shikamaru was no longer concerned. He just wanted to relax for a bit, gazing languidly up at the dull, gray clouds that covered Iron Country's skies. Then Shikamaru lit the aforementioned nicotine stick and took a second cigarette out of Asuma's last pack. I can see why Asuma Sensei was addicted to this stuff. Shikamaru took another puff from the aforementioned stick and settled his head on the tree's bark. He wanted to clear his head after doing those things for so long, so he'd get back to his team later. He will eventually return. Hinata activated her Byakugan to track the whereabouts of her teammates as soon as the gates were opened and the men started their assault. Her perspective changed as she witnessed the enormous earth wall that had been split along its lower edge collapsing after the samurai had practically bulldozed their way to the locations of the Anbu members, causing the wall to collapse and some of the ninjas to be buried there. But when she heard Kakashi asking her about Naruto's chakra coils, her perception changed once more. Which, somewhat surprisingly, were blending together, and that Naruto had 3 different kinds of chakra flowing through him. The rainbow of blue, green, and red came into her field of vision, allowing her to see the core of Naruto's chakra reserves. She observed that the red and green energies were attempting to balance each other out. The blue, normal chakra, which was attempting to absorb both, was situated in the center. The green energy started feeding the blue energy more as it started to mix, once the red one had somewhat stabilized. It appeared as though Sage Mode could counteract some of the negative effects of the red chakra. The evil red energy was placed in stasis and gradually absorbed by the blue energy. Her thoughts were interrupted when she noticed an Anbu member behind her, ready to knock her down. Suddenly, a gust of wind propelled the man away from her, hitting the hard, cold ground, and sliding into the snow. Hake Kusho, 8 trigrams, wind palm. Neji swiftly hinted, please do not let your guard down, Hinata. Sama, as he pursued the rude Anbu and drew back his hand, striking the man squarely in the chest with his palm. With a nod, Hinata spun around and locked eyes with the individual in front of her, an additional operator. With her Byakugan still in use, Hinata had lowered herself to the Jukin, facing her potential attacker with her palms open and charging. Just as Hinata extended her hand to avoid the man who had done a somersault over her, the rude Anbu leapt over her and swung his sword, preparing to give Hinata a vertical swipe. With a smooth turn to her right, the girl pointed her palm at the back of the Anbu member. The operator contorted his body as he came to rest, dodging the blow with only a few centimeters away from his vertebrae. Then the man landed on his free left hand, ready to swat his sword horizontally at Hinata's thighs, but the girl dodged the blow that would have left her permanently crippled. Hinata kept her position in the Jukin and observed her opponent intently. Before launching another attack, Hinata studied the man intently and directed her vision to his chakra system, which was now gushing like a waterfall. Compared to me, Neji, Nissan has more experience fighting armed shinobi. He had been sparring with Tenten San for a very long time. I'm more accustomed to fighting opponents without a weapon. That would be challenging. But Neji, Nissan has always maintained that sword users swing their weapons predictably. If the sword is swung above the head, a vertical cut will be made. If it is swung by the waist or torso with the hilt forward, a horizontal slash will be made. And if the blade is pointing forward, a vertical cut will be made. Then, with his body wavering from side to side and the blade tip naturally pointing in Hinata's direction, the man ran towards her with poise. A shove. Hinata avoided the blade by simply leaning her torso to the left. She then used her right arm to grab the man by the wrist and attempted to poke the man's tenketsu, which was located on his solar plexus. The man used his right arm as a shield and blocked with his free arm. Then Hinata changed the direction of her strike, closing the tenketsu on the man's right arm with her finger rather than jabbing him in the chest. The operative felt his grip loosen on his sword, and somehow Hinata heard a silent grunt of pain. When Hinata felt the man bring his sword down, she ducked and stepped forward. Hinata countered with another palm strike, this time to the nape of his neck, hoping to destroy the man's peripheral nervous system, the blade missing her by a few inches as she passed the hilt. The man just ran forward, and Hinata failed to land her blow. The man tried to raise his right arm but was unable to do so, and he grunted in pain. It was that same tingling, numbing pain. But Root had taught him that pain was just an impediment. Because they had been taught to disregard their flight response as regular humans, Roots ninjas believe that pain prevents the mind from achieving its goals and that survival instincts are not necessary. If anything, their only choice would be to fight. If fulfilling the mission required chopping off your own arm, then go ahead and do it. You exist solely for the purpose of the mission, by all means. The member's right arm appeared limp and was only experiencing a prickling sensation. He was unable to feel his arm. However, the man continued to grip his sword more firmly, as though his will to keep his katana had grown stronger. The member forced his hand up, and despite the intense pain inflicted on his right arm, he never once winced. All he knew was that he had to win. All he needed was the will to see the task through to completion and success. Not a thing more. For as long as he was alive, that was the conviction that his superior had ingrained in him. You do not exist en route. You don't have a past. It is not your present. You don't have a future. Just the mission. With focused attention, Hinata observed as the man raised his right arm to his chest and applied chakra to the closed tenketsu point she had just blocked. It was evident to her that the man was using force to open the small blocked point. She couldn't help but cringe at how much pain it must be causing him. Opening your tenketsu point forcefully could cause serious harm, including straining the chakra coils that distribute energy throughout the body. The veins that carry the chakra to various body parts may collapse or burst as a result of a strong opening. The man started shaping chakra with a ram seal, then grasped his sword in reverse. Ninpo. Mikazuki no Mai, Ninja Art, Dance of the Crescent Moon. The two clones started hovering by her side, resembling a firefly swaying in the breeze, as the man split into two. However, Hinata was more aware of her opponent's whereabouts because her Byakugan had already predicted it. Hinata concentrated chakra on her palms and started to thin it out like a fine thread, weaving what appeared to be a net of repelling chakra around her area. Shugo Hake Rokujui Ensho. Guardian of the 8 trigrams, 64 palms. The man's blade from above was parried and deflected away from his hands, and then he was caught in the dome of the repelling chakra net, with sharp, constant pain piercing every part of his body as if 1,000 needles had just started to rain. Hinata wasn't finished yet. She struck the man in the middle of his chest by placing the bases of her palms next to one another in a vertical position with her palms open. Izayoi Tenbu. 16th Moon Night Heaven Dance. As the lights of the energy pierced the man's body like bullets, chakra shot out of her palms and pierced his chest, destroying every chakra pathway. With the force of the attack, the man convulsed in midair and was blasted away. Hinata spun around to see a second member had materialized, this one from the ground. The member pulled out his katana and lunged at her. She clenched her teeth. Beating the first one wasn't an easy task, and dealing with another one was just another issue that would keep piling up. Then, with gritted teeth, Hinata faced the fact that even though these people were stronger than her, she would still give Naruto her life in defense, just as she had always done. This is my last gamble, Juho Soshikan. Gentle step twin lion fists. The chakra on her hands was glowing and dancing like wildfire, and she could feel 2 lion heads starting to form there. For the person that I love, I will do anything. Her confident smile gave the Anbu all the information they needed before she launched her attack directly at the man's body. Sakura. Sakura remained behind the lines for the majority of the assault and started tending to wounds left and right. She had a capable medical team at her disposal as well as a highly responsive medical unit. Although shinobi branched out in different areas, samurai were more specialized in combat and constituted an even more formidable presence than the Anbu. The samurai were not versatile. Get the antidotes ready for anyone who gets poisoned, have all the injured place in one area, separate the people those who are in mild and in critical injuries. Make the area for the critically injured close to our proximity as possible. Divide this unit into teams of 3, 3 for every patient that are in critical condition, 1 for every mildly injured person. Make sure you all have your soldier pills for an additional chakra boost. As the Godem Hokage's apprentice, Sakura started shouting commands left and right since she was more aware of what was typical for her age. Tsunade thought she was a genius in this area and might one day surpass her. As medics from both sides started delivering the injured one by one, some of whom had even sustained minor injuries themselves, Sakura started quickly going through the notes. Never underestimate a medic nin. She exclaimed, stopping briefly to look sharp as she sensed the killing intent rising from beneath the ground. She then ordered the medic corps to retreat while donning her black gloves. Sakura struck the earth with such force that the earth beneath her broke. Cracks and blocks of dirt emerged, spiking, exposing a rude shinobi that had been pursuing them for some time. Again clenching her knuckles, Sakura uttered, "Nobody messes with my friends." Sakura then leapt like a lightning bolt onto the man who had just shaken off his vertigo, avoiding another chakra-induced blow that caused the earth below to collapse even more. The man then started to breathe fireballs at Sakura while brandishing a housenka, causing him to jump. She ducked under the fireballs with a body twist, lifting her right leg over her head. When she was training Tsunade Shisho, she had witnessed her do this frequently. Tsunade instilled in her the belief that a medic nin's duty was to prevent being struck. She had become so adept at dodging that Tsunade claimed many would mistake her for having the Sharingan. It came naturally to her. Another was that fighting was a last resort for medic nins. Fighting was not an option because the medic was an essential member of the team, but in an emergency, it would be the right thing to do. Aside from medical jutsu, Tsunade had taught her fiercely during these times. Satenkyaku. Painful sky leg. Sakura's unexpected appearance on the man's side startled him with a heel strike that broke the ground. Taking hold of the man by the collar of his shirt, Sakura used her almost terrifying strength, comparable to that of Tsunade, to throw him into the air and punch him in the gut, piercing through organs and breaking his lower back. Kakashi was worried about the Hokage who had fled and battled Danzo alone, so he went back to find Sakura in case there was a backlash of this new type of power that the Hokage had inadvertently accumulated. Kakashi and Guy had arrived just in time to provide as backup. Kakashi wasn't surprised that Naruto was mentally exhausted by all of the revelations, leaving him frustrated about the whole situation. He had known that the political talks were stressing him out to the breaking point, and when Sasuke interrupted the meeting and confronted Madara about the truth about the Uchiha clan, it made sense. With the majority of the assault force battling the root forces along with the Iron Leader, Guy, on the other hand, decided it would be wiser to be on guard for the medic nin corps. In addition, Neji and Shikamaru were out in the battlefield. Guy trusted these people would be okay on their own. He just hoped the Hokage would maintain his composure. When they were ready to leave the gates, he had seen Naruto sag a little, and the bags under the Hokage's eyes revealed the exhaustion that had crept into his body. Since Naruto was responsible for nearly half of the attacks on Sasuke, and because he could see how much it hurt Naruto, he wasn't sure if he could leave him alone in that manner. When they were in the hallways a little earlier, Kakashi seemed to murmur something like, "It's the Valley of the End all over again." Even though Neji was forced to open up, some of the accounts following Neji's and Lee's battles were missing, so Guy was unaware of the specific events that transpired at the end of the mission that caused it to fail. Guy had not personally heard about this particular mission from Neji because the boy refused to tell about it. At that moment, two root ninja materialized directly before them. Based on their demeanor, Danzo most likely thought highly of them. With a simple hand seal, Kakashi revealed the Sharingan covered from his forehead protector and said, well, looks like I'll get to see more action after all." Guy just adopted his Guken stance. Kakashi ordered the pink-haired Shunin, who nodded, "Sakura, go and see to Hokage. Sama, Hinata is near his vicinity, she should be able to tell what occurred and what might happen." With his eyes fixed on their opponents, Guy went on, "Keep Hokage Sama safe and uninjured. We will handle this and catch up to you in a moment." Sakura nodded and dashed in the direction of the Hokage, who was only a few minutes away from eliminating the root leader. Naruto. An unbearable amount of rage welled up inside Naruto's head. There was nothing that could compare to the way he felt when Danzo brought up his actions against his mother. At that moment, Naruto could only see red. He could feel his anger building like a storm. His fury and indignation were even greater than Jiraiya's death when Kabuto nearly killed Tsunade and Sasuke fled Konoha. It had struck him more forcefully than anything he could have imagined. Was Sasuke's reaction the same each time he witnessed his family members die repeatedly? For the time being, Naruto was unable to respond to that question because he was about to throw a kunai at Danzo, the person who had destroyed both his and Sasuke's lives. Naruto was unable to tolerate the disgusting man in front of him. It only fueled his rage and never-ending hatred of the man. This was the man who, by siding with a dubious leader, had been suspected of using Akatsuki to kill the Sandaime, his grandfather figure. With that, he had struck Danzo, the evil man, with the hammer of justice. The man was impaled by his right shoulder. The weapon's blade pierced the old man's flesh, causing him to grunt in pain and causing blood to dampen Danzo's kimono, seeping to the point of the impaled kunai. The man turned to face Naruto, who was staring at him with wrath and malice in his eyes capable of setting fire to anything they saw. And those eyes were penetrating Danzo to the depths of his being right now. Death is a punishment too good for someone like you piece of shit. I have a better one in mind. After focusing his chakra on his right index finger, Naruto started pointing it at Danzo's forehead, causing it to flicker and spark brightly. Then, using his chakra, Naruto started carving the man's forehead with the makeshift seal he had created during his training a few days prior. Naruto started his hand seal sequence after carving the character Void on the old Warhawk's forehead. He couldn't exactly test this on Kakashi because it would have caused issues during the initial test, but he had planned to use it as a restraining measure if he ever encountered Sasuke on his way to the summit. However, Danzo believed that he could accomplish this without hesitation, without holding back, and without much of an issue. His first attempt at suppressing Danzo's Sharingan was with the seal of the boar. He then went on to use the seal of the ever noble tiger, the destroyer of everything, a representation of strength and flames. The ram will complete and shape the chakra into a single focal point after the rat spreads the seal and initiates the network connection within Danzo's chakra system. Naruto then touched the extremist leader's forehead once more, and this time, the seal glowed. Danzo felt his Sharingan abruptly disappear from his right eye in a matter of seconds, as if it had deactivated in some way. For a brief moment, he felt the coils in his chakra come to a stop. A few minutes later, he lost the ability to feel the chakra and felt completely helpless against the boy who was in front of him, those cross eyes displaying that unmistakably intense glare. He sensed that the Hokage had intended to do more than merely contain his chakra and Sharingan, but the man's self-control was astounding. As he knelt over Danzo's body and started beating the battered man on the ground, Naruto felt his Sage Chakra and the Biju Chakra fading from him. Naruto kept crying uncontrollably during this entire time. Bastard! You killed her! You killed her! You ruined my life! You ruined our lives! Naruto continued to beat, putting all of his hurt and rage into his fists. I wanted to kill you. I wanted to murder you. Make you feel pain before finally lobbing of your head. Naruto continued beating the man on his face, breaking Danzo's jaw, and unleashed another round of punches. Naruto, never forget that understanding is the key to peace. Jiraiya's voice rang in his head. Rewind. A weeping 3-year old Naruto wandered through their small apartment's hallway, calling out to his mother, Mama. Where are you? Naruto kept saying, I had a nightmare. In between tears. Trying to stop the tears, he held his closed hands to his eyes. Naruto asked, Where are you, Mama? Again. There was a rainstorm that night, thunder resounded throughout the house, and Naruto was sobbing and cries out for his mother. I'm scared. I'm cold. Where did you go? Flashback concludes. Naruto could feel all of his rage and anger congealing into one moment as he continued to beat the man's face. The old war hawk was finally forced to scream his agony aloud after Naruto gave him a punch to the face. Naruto felt his eyes start to water more as he got to his feet. His tears turned to blood, and he started to cough up more blood as he stared at the ground covered in snow. He fell to one knee and at last passed out. His right hand started to show red and blue marks as he progressively lost consciousness. This very moment, Naruto. Chan. A voice drifted into his consciousness and then, slowly, the darkness took over. Mama, Mama. Look. Yelled a 3-year old Naruto, grasping his mother's sleeve and pulling with all of his strength. His innocent smile was fixed on his face as he held out a piece of paper covered in colorful drawings. The woman with the red hair then knelt down and examined the drawing her son had made on paper. A soft smile slipped from her mouth. This is wonderful, Naru. Chan. Is this me? Naruto gave a passionate nod. Kushina grinned and gave her son a warm embrace, feeling pleased and content with her son's devotion. Carrying a small blanket, Naruto peered into the small, dark room in the middle of the night. The boy then gently nudged his mother's arm to wake her up. Disoriented from her abrupt sleep disruption, Kushina awoke to see Naruto's sobbing figure holding a tiny blanket. Mama, I had a nightmare. I dreamt I was being eaten by a monster. After the blonde stopped crying, Kushina smiled softly and gestured for Naruto to join her by moving to the side of her bed. Then the young child climbed onto the bed while Kushina comforted her son, saying, "Don't worry, Mama's here, I won't let anything happen to you." As Naruto gently drifted off to sleep in Kushina's arms, he experienced the cozy bliss of sleep once more. When the sound of thunder reverberated through the corridors, Naruto was startled into waking up. The boy looked around before getting down, and when he entered the room he knew well, he discovered that the bed was empty. The blonde started to panic and start looking around the house while sprinting as fast as his short legs would allow. He looked at the bathroom as he ran through the house and then went to the living room, where he yelled for his mother. He yelled, "Mama! Mama! Where are you?" Into the darkness of their home as the rain started to pour outside and thunder reverberated through the tiny home's hallway. Naruto kept sobbing while putting his closed hands to his eyes in an attempt to stop the tears. "I had a nightmare," he exclaimed. Naruto asked, "Where are you, Mama?" Again. There was a rainstorm that night, thunder resounded throughout the house, and Naruto was sobbing and cries out for his mother. "I'm scared. I'm cold. Where did you go?" "Right here, Naruto. Chan." Naruto immediately ran to the location where he had heard his mother's voice. She was kneeling on the ground, looking incredibly exhausted and disheveled, and tears were streaming down her face. Naruto, distraught, rushed to her mother and gave her an embrace. As he embraced her, Kushina ignored the pain in her back and gave his small child a back hug. "I had a nightmare again," he exclaimed. In her tender embrace, she soothed Naruto. Unbeknownst to Naruto, she began to grind her teeth as the poisoned kunai's pain began to take its toll. It was moving quickly, moving through her body as swiftly as lightning. She wanted to say one last goodbye to Naruto before she passed away and left him behind. The young blonde gave her an intense hug, and Kushina felt her resolve falter a little. She gave Naruto the tightest hug possible, unable to display the distressed expression of a mother at this moment because Naruto required her. Kushina sang to her son in the middle of their last, sweet embrace. "Little one, please be quiet. Your mother will purchase a mockingbird for you." Kushina couldn't bear to leave her son alone in this world, and as she sang that song, she could feel her son's breathing slowing down and her tears beginning. She feared the worst, knowing that no one could save him in a world where they would use him, among a crowd of people who hated him. Singing the song that her son loved so much, she put her son on his bed and, with sheer determination, willed herself to stand up. She tucked her son into bed and gave him a kiss on the cheeks. She felt her voice falter and her lips moisten with salty tears. She had 2 more stanzas of the song left when she got up. In the event that the horse and cart collapse, you'll always be the cutest young man in the community. One final stanza, one last present to her son before she goes. It was becoming more difficult to even talk, much less listen. She required strength. Regarding Naruto. "Oh dear, one more please. So quiet down, little one, and stop crying. Dad adores you," and so on. "Take action. She had softly shut Naruto's door as she left. Thud. When Naruto opened his eyes, he realized he was in a hospital because of the white ceiling and the antiseptic smell that filled his nose. He looked around, groaning, and saw that he had multiple cords fastened to his chest. He could also hear the machine beeping, producing jagged lines that went up and down. "It is a relief to see you are finally awake." He looked where the voice was coming from and saw Mifune leaning against the wall, parallel to his bed. "You have been out for 48 hours, Hokage. Dono." With another moan, Naruto sat up, stretched his aching back, and said to Mifune, "What happened, Mifune?" "San? The attempted usurpation to the alliance has fallen. Your plan was excellent." Mifune responded, and went on to say, "Danzo has been detained into one of our cells, all remnants of his forces in this country had been wiped out, and we have very minimal to low amounts of casualties. If it not for your medic, we would have far worse. I commend your predecessor on teaching such an excellent apprentice of hers." Naruto simply nodded. He then noticed that his right shoulder, cheek, and abdomen were all bandaged. He then flexed his right arm and made fists, discovering that it was also bandaged. When Sakura suddenly barged into Naruto's room, a very irate girl with cherry blossom hair met her, clutching a chart, and yelling at the blonde, "Don't be so reckless, Hokage." "Sama. Did you know what happened to you?" she asked, causing Naruto to wince at the tone of her voice. Subsequently, Mifune left the room, clearly feeling uneasy about Sakura's verbal abuse directed at the captain. Commander. Internal hemorrhage of the worst kind, that's what. Some of the major blood vessels were ruptured, it turned to aneurysm. Sakura turned to look at the chart and saw that Naruto had multiple punctures, lacerated blood vessels, internal hemorrhages, and even a terrible case of pneumothorax. In one episode, Naruto was on the verge of passing out. If Kyuubi hadn't intervened at that moment, Naruto would have undoubtedly died. When Hinata revealed the reason behind the aforementioned phenomenon, it was because of the violent reaction that the two opposing chakras of nature and the Kyuubis caused over time. This caused the stored chakra in the cells to gradually dissolve, to the point where the very structure of the cells started to fall apart. Sakura was left wondering how the wounds on Naruto had healed so quickly, even though it had not happened naturally. There was probably something to be grateful for in the strengthened seal of the fourth. Sakura started talking as she glanced over Naruto's chart. She said somberly, "We thought we could have lost you, you know." Gazing downward, Naruto remained silent. "When you fought Danzo, I guess your anger was at your limit." Naruto was unable to respond. He was speechless when discussing what had transpired. Instead, he curled his hands into fists and ruffled the blanket covering him as he stayed silent and gazed at the sheets that kept him warm. "But that doesn't excuse you why you have to be so rash, Naruto." Naruto winced once more. "You're always like this. You're willing to sacrifice yourself just so you could finish something. Don't you know that all of us were concerned when you were near the brink of death? Just this once, Naruto, just don't do things that could lead to your death. We've lost Sasuke-kun already, I'm not about to lose you too. Don't try to push yourself further than you already have." Naruto received another round of tongue lashings, but he was too focused on his recent dream to respond intelligently. Or more accurately, a memory he was unaware he had. Sakura yelled, "Are you even listening to me?" Naruto gave an inattentive nod. Gazing out the window, he observed the snow softly cascading down the pristine white ground. Even though his memory was hazy, he suddenly remembered his mother. He wasn't sure why he would forget such vivid recollections of a person who was very important to him and had shown him love. Before his mother passed away, something must have happened to cause him to lose memory. Why, was the question. "I'm sorry, Sakura, it's been one hell of a ride, realizations after one another, unbearable truths about my past, about Sasuke's, I can't believe it, all my life, it was dictated by the people in the higher-ups of the village, or more precisely, someone who manipulated everything underground. The same person that was responsible in instigating such a terrible act against Sasuke's family and mine as well. After what Danzo said about me, I could only see red." As Sakura stood there silently, Naruto briefly held his head and leaned back, smiling pitifully, asking, "How could I forget my own mother like that?" It was Sakura's turn to be stunned this time. She would have said that Naruto was a fool back then for having forgotten someone significant, like his mother. To put it mildly, Sakura learned the terrible consequences of her previous behavior toward her team, which was eye-opening. It was much too late to take any action with her teammates by the time she started looking at them beyond their outward attitudes, as she had never bothered to do back then. Sasuke had become disengaged from them. Naruto was already leaving for Jiraiya's training expedition. After her training sessions with Tsunade, she was forced to spend hours surreptitiously browsing through shinobi profiles in order to learn about her teammates. She was done talking, she was done snooping, and she knew that stress of any kind would be bad for Naruto. Shikamaru had been correct about Naruto all along. It was sufficient that he made that choice regarding Sasuke. After that, she told Naruto, "Get some rest, Hokage. Sama. I don't know what happened back there with Danzo. I won't cry. But whatever it is that's bothering you right now, please settle it quickly. The Raikage has left in search of his brother 2 days ago, while the other cages remain to discuss some of the preparations with you." As soon as Sakura left the house, the 3 surviving cages and the Iron Clan leader went inside. Everyone in Konoha then turned to face the pink-haired Kunoichi and informed them that Naruto was now awake. However, Sakura attempted to stop them while the Hokage was still recuperating. From the Tsuchikage, it met with an urgent stare. The elderly gentleman replied, "That may be, but this war takes precedence above all. Every human life is at stake here, recovery time can be given to him on a much more lax period." Once inside, the 3 surviving village leaders respectfully faced the Cage of Fire Country, all of whom had cold, calculated expressions on their faces. When Gaara spoke, it was with the same formality as any other diplomat. Hokage. Dono, we commend you for your strategy in exterminating the forces that threatened the alliance. Also, after you lost consciousness, the 5 of us had disputed over the potential candidacy of the Supreme Commander. This time, Mifune intervened. We can't risk you being exposed to the battlefield this early on, Hokage. Dono, but we can't also risk you not being there, the fact that you have veritable strategic knowledge of the battlefield. We can't let you be sent to the front lines. Naruto had jumped in right away, saying, "What?" The Tsuchikage said, "Indeed, I may have considered the hosts of the Hachibi and the Kyuubi to be a very vital part on the front lines when we are out there, but it is also a fact that your chakras are painfully obvious once you let the beast out, a factor which I have forgotten about the Jinchuriki." The Mizukage had quickly added, "You are a vital part of the war, Hokage." Dono. We lose you and the 8 Tails host, we lose everything, to which Naruto briefly became enraged. He clenched his fists. "I'm sorry, Hokage. Dono, but we can't have you being enlisted as a part of the forces in this war. Strategic meetings that will commence on the alliance will be held in secret, with only the 6 of us talking like this. We will hide your location as to where that meeting will take place. And the one that shall take over as the second in command will be Raikage. Dono that will pose as the Supreme Commander up front." Naruto wanted to object, but he was aware that the other leaders were correct. He still hadn't figured out a way to stop Madara from manipulating time and space. And Naruto said, "Has the Raikage accepted?" After that, the Chief of Iron nodded along with the rest of the cages. The case cage continued, "Not only that, Tsuchikage. Dono has also given us information on some of Madara's techniques, being one of the people that Madara had fought long ago." And with that, the Tsuchikage looked and said, "What of the prisoner?" After holding his chin for a moment, Naruto addressed the leaders, saying, "Is there anything else that you need to tell me? I have questions I need answered from the man, and if I can pull this off, we may be able to reduce the numbers of Akatsuki members forcing Madara into a corner." They all sighed and Naruto responded, "Then let me get some rest for now. As soon as you can, go back to your respective villages and start preparing. For now, we need to determine Akatsuki's main base of operations since AIM has withdrawn its support from Akatsuki." After the leaders left the room, the remaining Konoha ninja hurried in, eager to learn about the events that had just transpired in the war that the Tsuchikage had mentioned. Shikamaru looked at the Hokage, who was sitting on his bed and staring out at the snow-covered skies of Iron Country. "What's going on, Hokage? Sama? What did the Tsuchikage mean that we're going to war?" he asked. Akatsuki declared war on the 5 main hidden villages, seeing as they now have 7 of the 9 Biju. "We decided to form an alliance to counter the threat. Before that, they terrorized the summit itself. Guess who was with them?" Shikamaru was frowning the entire time he said the name, Sasuke, because he didn't like where this was going. Naruto nodded gravely. Sakura appeared momentarily horrified. The idea of Sasuke taking part in a terrorist attack on the summit was causing her to tremble visibly. Sasuke may be cool, but when it came to his objectives, he was nearly always reserved and had an impulse worse than Naruto. She asked Naruto, "What's going to happen to Sasuke-kun, now?" in a trembling voice. "I can't pardon him, Sakura. He's assaulted the 5 cages, and no one can deny he's part of Akatsuki now," Naruto sighed as he looked up at his room's ceiling. However, it turns out that Madara is brainwashing Sasuke to do his bidding. So there may be hope yet. One last chance, Sakura. We have one last chance to get him back or at least defect from Madara. Kakashi had responded on behalf of Naruto. Sakura briefly had a somber expression. Was this how it was all going to end? Now could you please let me get some rest? Tomorrow, I'll have a talk with our old friend, Danzo. Immediately, his subordinates nodded and started to leave through the door. However, not before Hinata had informed the Hokage that, "I'm glad that you're safe, Hokage. Sama." For a brief moment, Naruto appeared confused and puzzled. That is, until he recalled the day she had told him. With a sad smile on his face, Naruto said, "Hinata, stay with me for a moment. I still have something to say." As Hinata turned to face Naruto, she put down her hand for the doorknob. Her face was flushed red from the blood that was seeping up her cheeks, and she could feel her heartbeat quickening. What is it?" She was certain that she had been gradually moving past her shy phase, but it was more difficult now that Naruto appeared prepared to respond. It was that stutter again. Sit down for a moment and relax, this won't take 10 minutes. After Hinata followed instructions, Naruto said, I apologize for not getting back to you on this sooner, but I had a lot of things to take care of. This was met with a shake of Hinata's head. It's no problem, Naruto. Kun. With a faint chuckle, Naruto went on, you know you're always too kind for your own good sometimes. Naruto smiled and said, but then I guess that's why I like people like you, Hinata. You're always looking out for everybody, even when you knew I was going to fight your cousin 3 years ago. Hinata appeared momentarily alarmed at that point. With a calm smile, Hinata answered, it's no big deal, Naruto. Kun. I just gave you words of encouragement. I'm glad that I was one of the reasons why you wanted to win against Neji. Nissan. I guess you have a way with words, Hinata. Remember that mission back then when we went to hunt down Itachi? Naruto said, grinning softly. Then Naruto spoke, looking back, I was a bit tense when we started, I was nervous, we were about to go on a hunt for a ninja that was clearly beyond our league back then. I was nervous of the fact that Itachi might kill one of you guys and me being taken away. But you cheered me up and told me to do my best. It's been a while since I felt that much lighter than normal, like somehow, I felt the weight I was carrying was lighter. The blonde laughed a little again and added, I never got to thank you for that. With a sincere response, Hinata said, it's enough that I encouraged you. Again, a blush escaped her cheeks. For a brief moment, Naruto gave her one of his signature smiles before turning serious and keeping his eyes fixed on the ivory white ceiling. Then, pain attacked, you jumped right in front of me, just in time before I was taken away. But most importantly, you said those 3 words that stopped me dead in my tracks for a moment. For the time being, Hinata remained silent because she was interested in hearing Naruto's words. I've never really understood what love was in a romantic sense. I thought that I just wanted to protect everyone, like Nagato wanted for his precious people. He just wanted to protect his friends that grew as his family. Naruto then asked, do you regret anything that you said to me, Hinata? As a moment of silence shook the room. With a kind smile that made Naruto smile, she said, I don't regret anything that I have said, Naruto. Kun, it's the truth. I've been in love with you since we were children. That fact will never change. He recognized the same charming Hinata from their childhood days, but she exuded confidence now more than before. To some extent, Naruto was pleased with Hinata's transformation. He found some small comfort in the knowledge that one of his friends had been. Well, I don't know, I'm flattered Hinata, but I still don't know. I've been fighting for recognition all of my life. Every time I talk to you, I can't help but feel at ease. With Sakura it's different. I don't know, Hinata, it's just, I don't feel like I can pursue a relationship yet. Hell, I don't even think I should be Hokage at the moment. To me, Tsunade Chan is still the Hokage that loves to drink and gamble all her money when she thinks we don't know. Naruto said that in an amused tone, letting out a small laugh. She said, looking less than amused, please don't force yourself to answer my confession, Naruto. Kun. Take your time. Don't think you can address this whenever you can. I would like it if you take your time and finally know what you truly feel about me. Please don't force yourself. With a poignant smile, Naruto said, thank you, Hinata. You really do have a way with words. I'm sure you'll make a fine clan head and a great wife someday. His voice was genuine. Hinata let out another flush of blushes. Although she hadn't anticipated Naruto to bring up the subject so quickly, she was relieved that he didn't reject her outright. She grinned as she got to her feet, feeling a little relieved. Sensing that there was still hope, she said to Naruto, you know that's our way, Naruto. Kun. It's not in my nature to give up though. Naruto smiled and jumped in, glad that Hinata had accepted his explanation for the time being. I know. Our Nindo. She then turned to leave and shut the door. Naruto sensed that he was starting to nod off again. He had never in his life slept so soundly. Konoha. Tsunade knelt in front of her 3 ninjas and took a seat. It had been almost 2 weeks since the fight with Pain, and because of the stasis they had experienced, she could still feel every muscle in her body hurt. Tsunade surveyed the tent, her vision still hazy from the effects of some of the drugs administered to her during her coma. She cursed her current vertigo, believing it was a legitimate side effect of the seemingly potent drug. 2 days ago, she was more grumpy than she is now. 2 days ago, she was rudely and abruptly woken up by a noise outside her tent, which made her temper flare up like she was going through an alcohol withdrawal. The battle within was not particularly pleasant, and the noise outside was as quiet as a hammer for a ninja. Rewind, 2 days prior. Outside the tent, there was a constant scream from people and the sound of metal hitting metal, with techniques cascading out like rainwater. A tiny black rodent infiltrated the white tent where Tsunade was sleeping, darting among the vials and bottles containing herbs and medications until it halted on an IV stand. The rodent squeaked and sniffed as it stood there. 5 Ink. Based beasts suddenly leapt into the tiny space and started to attack the seemingly innocuous IV stand, which burst open to reveal a member of the Root Division who had escaped the animated beast's attack. The man's voice seemed monotonous as he addressed the figure seated outside the wall. "Are you betraying the organization?" The figure remained silent as the ink lions started to circle and growl at their prey, stalking them until they were ready to make the kill. As the man sidestepped and grabbed his blade, the beast on his right quickly lunged at him, dispelling the clone and sending ink flying to the ground as the other lions growled and snarled at him. The ink beast to the left then dove below, trying to bite the ANBU's ankle. The Anbu avoided this by bending his knees below and then leaping, and he also dispelled the ink beast by thrusting his katana into its face. The man in question was about to perform a jutsu when he was interrupted because the beasts would not allow him to continue. The wolves continued their pursuit of the Anbu, bringing down medical racks, breaking herbal bottles, and sending medicine splintering onto the ground as they clashed and sidestepped every snarling creature. A few minutes into the match, Tsunade, who appeared extremely enraged, suddenly grabbed the man by the throat. Just as the man was about to stab Tsunade in the stomach, Tsunade drove the man's face into the glass covered floor of her tent. The man's face was embedded with innumerable jagged pieces of broken glass, causing blood to splash onto the surrounding surface. "I was taking a nap, goddammit. Can't you little shits be quiet just for once?" Then the man was flung outside, straight into the path of the 3 Root Anbu forces acting as a ruse. It started to make cracking sounds, so Tsunade went outside and clenched her fists. The 3 Anbu were taken aback by the burly Hokage's sudden charge towards them. Tsunade had materialized right in front of them, ready to deliver a deadly kick that would have sent them into lower Earth orbit. With all her might, Tsunade yelled, "Get out!" The Godime's strength caused some of the 4 ninjas' bones to break as they were punted into the air. Genma and Aoba were stunned. With a frown on her face, the woman turned to face the 3 surprised ninja on her back and exclaimed, "What the hell is going on here?" Flashback concludes. As expected, midway through Shizune, Aoba, and Genma's explanations, Tsunade started massaging her temples in anticipation of the upcoming paperwork and headaches. She wanted to pretend to be ill once more and abandon the cage's work, just for once. She intended to give Danzo a hard time for his rebellion. Keep out of the Hokage's way. "Alright, where's Danzo? I'm going to give him a beating that he'll never forget before I decide what to do with him." Aoba said, "Danzo is in Iron Country, Godem. Sama. Right now, we have sent an approximate 2 teams to capture and or neutralize any of Danzo's root forces. He was supposed to assassinate Rokudame. Sama." Tsunade briefly flexed her knuckles. The 3 Junin then exchanged glances. "Hold on, Rokudame." Tsunade questioned angrily, both hands now resting on their heads. "What? Why was a new Hokage instated quickly? Who's the new Hokage?" That is, until Shizune answered her. "Uzumaki Naruto is the Rokudame, Tsunade. Sama. He was instated in such short notice due to the Cage Summit taking place." The name and the occasion made Tsunade pale. The thought of Naruto attending the summit as the representative at Konoha made her feel as though her face was losing blood. The words, summit, and diplomacy were incompatible without some sort of disastrous incident. Tsunade raised her hands in frustration and sighed, who was the idiot that nominated him in the first place? He's still far too young, inexperienced in dealing with politics, and the people are letting him run the village. It was the Lord of Fire, Tsunade. Sama. He elected Naruto Sama to his current position with the support of the council. If it wasn't for Naruto Sama, Danzo would have probably been the Rokudame. Tsunade was ready for sake. Tsunade asked, "There's more to this, isn't there?" The 3 Junins in the room exchanged a quick glance and shrugged. Sai was a little anxious outside, but he didn't show it because he didn't know how. However, he could tell by his body language that he wasn't able to simply report to the Godem at this time. Somehow, I feel like I'll die when I enter there. I'll just report this when the Rokudame arrives, the pale boy muttered as he turned around. After that, Sai left to go to an apartment that Yamato had previously built. Day 2 in Iron Country. Standing in front of the doors leading to the cell containing the notorious root leader, Naruto was dressed in full uniform and had taken off his bandages after his body's regeneration was complete the previous evening. Naruto entered the room, took off his red and black haori, and sat down on the chair directly in front of Danzo. There was only one drop light in the room, and it lit the table between Danzo and Naruto. With a mocking tone, he said, "Hokage. Sama, it is well that you could visit me in this time of day." Naruto just gave the man a scowl and met Danzo's gaze directly. "I don't have any intentions of mundane talk here, Danzo, I want answers. Why did you attack the summit?" A tiny smile crossed Danzo's lips as he answered, "Why should I tell you? You have no business knowing about my goals. Why did you attack the summit?" Naruto questioned again while he sat there calmly. "None of your concern." After putting up a hand seal right away, Naruto discovered Danzo writhing in pain on his chair. He then questioned, "Why did you attack the summit? If I had succeeded, you would see the reason why. Sarutobi thought it was possible to company. Exist with the other villages through diplomacy, in case of emergencies within the elemental countries. Meetings such as the Five Cages Summit is a vital part in regards to peace. I opposed that idea." Danzo went on to say, "Giving a country free reins upon their agendas as well as privacy is an act of leniency. People are notorious for treachery and switching sides when it is time to bite the knife. Human minds do not work like that. People are selfish, greedy, warmongering brutes. They wage wars to gain more from their adversaries and grow strong. Resources are limited, that is why countries clamor to gain more resources to grow from the destruction of others. If you do not sway with the tides, then you shall crash and burn." Naruto asked, "What are you getting at?" "I wanted for Konoha to become an empire, a nation worthy to be feared, the 5 main hidden villages along with the rest of its allies, united under the emblem of Konohagakure no Sato." Danzo replied with a scowl, "You intend to conquer the 5 main hidden villages and in the process, envelop the whole continent under one flag?" Danzo responded, "It is truly a shame that I had failed in doing so. We were about to infiltrate as well, it seems like there is a rat among my subordinates." Naruto asked, his scowl never disappearing from his face, "What subordinates?" Danzo was momentarily silent, scowling at Naruto as the Rokudame got up from his seat and pivoted to his right. "I had the samurai ordered to cut down any ninja that stood in their path. You gave me no choice, as long as you have your cronies with you, shit like this will happen anytime. I can't allow that." Danzo asked, "Then why didn't you finish me off?" Naruto simply answered, "I still have questions that need to be answered." Danzo could still feel the seal's aftereffects, asking, "Do you think I'll answer after what you've done to me?" Danzo felt all of his hard work evaporate from his hands once the boy had sealed away both his chakra and the Sharingan. Nothing would ever make Danzo's dream of becoming a ninja come true at this point, just as a sculptor loses his hands while creating statues. His body was crippled, and all he had was a useless transplanted right eye. There is nothing more cruel than going through life without the object you held in such high regard. "I'm the one asking questions, Danzo, you're not supposed to ask one." Naruto replied. "You're not very good at it." Naruto growled, "Don't test me, bastard." His rage was about to erupt once more, but Danzo didn't seem to be fazed. Then Naruto walked up to Danzo and grabbed him by the collar. "I want to know one thing, did you wipe my memories during my childhood? As vague as a memory of a 3-year-old is, there has to be at least my memory of my mother in there. Did you have something to do with it?" Danzo answered in a cool tone, "Do you want to know?" For a brief moment, flashing a smile that Naruto had missed. Danzo answered while Naruto stayed silent, that sparkle in his eye never going away. "I suggested it to the advisors once word had gone out that Kushina was killed." Danzo went on, "It is well known that Jinchuriki manifest their powers when they are upset. Childhood is very important for the host to develop a sound mind. Without someone to guide you, your mental state would have collapsed as soon as you found out about your mother's demise. You'd be taciturn. Your mood changes would have brought out destruction of the village, so I told the advisors of Sarutobi of a way to prevent that. So in order to do that, you wiped out my memories of my mother?" asked Naruto. Danzo simply responded, "You sound like it was I who ordered that your memory be altered. I only gave the suggestion. Let me tell you something, Rokudame. All decisions regarding about you back then should be filtered by the Hokage before being approved. Why do you think I haven't had the chance to use you as the ultimate soldier for my armies? Why do you think you were so untouchable when you were a child? The most awful thing ever being done to you was the ignorance and stares from the villagers." Danzo asked sarcastically, and Naruto just looked at him with disdain. After forcing the man to return to his seat, he moved to one side of the table. Naruto yelled at Danzo, "Shut up." After he had responded, "If anything, you should blame Hiruzen. He was the one who authorized to do what happened to you." Pulling a kunai from his pouch, Naruto threw it on the table next to Danzo. He would never believe anything this man said. No, the Sandaime wouldn't do that to himself. There was no way he would let that happen. He never had a grandfather like the man he trusted. He would never act in this manner or condone it. Oh? In denial are we? How much time did you spend with Sarutobi? How many times did he look so distant and so thoughtful when he stared at you? Like something he had regret as he was with you? You have been desensitized by his sugar-coated words and kindness that you have forgotten what he did to you. Oh wait, you wouldn't remember because your memories were altered. Danzo responded, and Naruto seemed to pause for a while. For a moment he ignored the crippled Warhawk. Naruto's fists clenched. There is no black and white, all there is the shade of gray. There is no absolute in this world except for life and death. The Sandaime, for all his intents and purposes, is much of a sinner as I am. Danzo said with a chuckle. When Naruto could take no more of the man, he stormed out of the room, slamming the door shut behind him. With haste, Naruto went outside. Troubled by Danzo's statement, the young leader started walking up the stairs at his own pace. He angrily pounded on the wall with his right hand, cursing Danzo's name and swearing under his breath. He had never imagined that Konoha kept skeletons in its closet that were best left undiscovered, and it appeared to involve many of the city's well-known families as well. Tsunade seemed to be unaware of many secrets, whether they belonged to an infamous clan or to a member of the Hokage's family. Get ready for the journey back to Konoha. The sooner we get there, the sooner we settle things over there. I need to find out what happened to Tsunade, Ba-chan, and question the advisors on their decisions, he told his subordinates after they had gathered close to his quarters. The Konoha ninja quickly gave their leader a salute and started following orders. 2 hours later, outside the eastern exit of the Fanged Maw. After meeting two teams of Konoha shinobi, who were presumably there as backup against the attempted coup, Naruto knelt down and waited for his subordinates to descend. He then informed them that Danzo was in a prison cell below and that they could just ask for the name with his permission. After finishing that, Naruto called upon another elder toad by biting his thumb. With a slight cough, Fukasaku emerged from the smoke and summoning circle and addressed his summoner, asking, "Why did you bring me out here, Naruto?" "Chan? I want to know more about Fuinjutsu, Fukasaku. Sensei. Also, I'd like to ask you something about the nature chakra. It seemed I accidentally mixed nature chakra and Kyuubi's during my fight with Danzo. I thought that the nature chakra would repel the Biju's chakra, but it found a moment where it remained in perfect synchronization. Are you saying that the nature chakra found itself neutralizing the effect of the Kitsune's Yuki?" Fukasaku asked the young sage, his eyes widening. Nodded. In a manner of speaking, yeah. I was able to synchronize myself with the nature chakra. I developed the same heightened senses as I did with the fox's chakra. What was surprising though, was that I felt the seal on my stomach released a total of 6 taels worth of chakra, but I didn't even form the chakra cloak, and I could do the same tricks as when I used the Biju. Naruto paused for a moment and continued, it had a terrible side effect though. I suffered internal bleeding and some major blood vessels had popped. Sakura said that I suffered an aneurysm and it was only thanks to the Kyuubi's regeneration that I survived. As he sat there on the blanket of snow, Fukasaku started to wonder what could have caused Naruto to experience such a strong chakra repulsion. Why hasn't the nature chakra synchronized with the Kyuubi's chakra during the invasion, if it is possible? For what reason would the Kyuubi oppose the merging with Fukasaku? After giving it some thought, Fukasaku leapt to the blonde's shoulders and started to explain. I think I may have a clue as to why the body had suffered that much damage. Naruto asked, what? With curiosity. Fukasaku asked his pupil, "Do you know the aspect between yin and yang?" Naruto shook his head. "That's understandable. Yin and yang are two parts of a whole, the equilibrium or balance. Yin is the spiritual aspect, or in this case, mental aspect. It is the spiritual part of chakra. Dominant yin jutsu use more of the mind aspect. In this case, an example of a yin-dominant jutsu is the Nara clan's shadow techniques. Yin is stasis, inactivity, cold." Fukasaku went on to say, "Now, the yang aspect is the physical aspect of your chakra. Dominant yang jutsu primarily involve changing bodily functions and structures. An example would be the activation of the Hachiman, 8 gates, since it removes the limiters to one's body. The yang aspect increases the strain that the muscles can take and along with it, reaction time and reflexes. Yang is compulsion, activity, hot. Do you follow, Naruto?" "Chan?" Naruto gave a nod. Fukasaku grinned as he continued, "Good, now nature chakra has the yin and yang aspect the same as normal chakra. Only that nature chakra is vastly more potent than a human's. Though it is yin-dominated, it doesn't mean it is spiritual in absolute. Nature chakra still has the basic physical and spiritual components. Now, if I remember correctly, the Yandaime separated the chakras of the Kyuubi, sealing the yang chakra in you and then the yin chakra into the toad scroll that Jiraiya Chan left us. The chakra repulsion of nature chakra and the Kyuubis resulted in the inadequacy of the yin chakra to complete the cycle of yin and yang. Simply put, the yang forces of both chakras are fighting to gain the yin chakra rather than company. Exist. The overloaded yang chakra, instead of fusing with the cells, end up pushing each other outwards in an adverse effect. That's why it caused so much damage within the body." Naruto simplified Fukasaku's comment. "In other words, the problem with me is that I don't have enough of the spiritual aspect of chakra and the incomplete energy is fighting for the limited amount?" Fukasaku raised his eyebrows. "That is from what I can surmise. If you want to use it without limiting your usage, then there's no other way but for you to fuse with the yin chakra of the Kyuubi." Naruto fell silent for a moment. This was becoming more and more common. He was unsure of the reason, but it appeared that as Hokage, he had developed the tendency to consider his options before responding. He was getting much clearer in his head somehow by considering things through before making a decision. "I'll do it," was Naruto's sole response prior to continuing, "but not before finishing some of my obligations in the village for a few days. I need Master Fuinjutsu anyway. It would take me months, or even a few years, but I certainly need the help to do it. I've only got the basics down, and with this war that's about to happen, the sealing arts would play a vital part in it." Nodded. "Then, I'll have a sealing chamber prepared once you're done in Konoha." "But are you prepared, Naruto? Chan? This training could eventually kill you and force the Kyuubi back into the world of the living." He could only respond by nodding. "Taking risks is a gamble that's paid off for me for quite some time. This may be my biggest challenge yet, but any chance of getting stronger is a chance I'm willing to take. I can't let Madara do what he wants, and if this is one of the opportunities presented to me for getting stronger, then so be it." Even with its solemnity, Fukasaku could only nod. Outside Iron Country, the only sound was the howling winter winds against the clear sky. Various place. A man in his middle age, with short stature, stood over an axe embedded in a tree's bark. His eyebrows were as thick as a blood-sucking leech. He tried wearing his hair in a punch-perm bun to keep it back. The man was dressed in multiple layers of fishnet armor held together by a black obi tied around his waist, with a traditional black hakama and white shiakusho on top. Then, in a slow, rhythmic voice, the man started singing, "Oh, shinobi. Ever concealed. Crying silent tears." Holding his closed right fist to his head as if to stop an overwhelming sense of accomplishment and excitement, the man started to shake passionately. The man tried to control his enthusiasm for the item in question by saying, "You cannot simply sing. Enka is an expression of one's heart and soul." The man below exclaimed, "Now, see if you can match me." He had 2 swords strapped on his back, the hilts of which protruded just behind his right shoulder, and his hair was pulled back to conceal his eyes. His large, muscular body was only partially covered by leather armor, a long scarf around his neck, and an obi style rope over his black pants. Shinobi. Sneaking about, yeah. Escaping from death. Unlike his teacher, though, the man found it difficult to control his intense emotion when performing. The man exclaimed, lifting his right hand in a "I love you" gesture, YYYEHHH. The enormous tanuki on the man's back gave Killer B a fleeting glance. For a few moments the forest was filled with an awkward silence. This is going to take a lot of work, Sabu bowed his head, palming his forehead and gripping the bridge of his nose. You do not have the passion. The passion. Are you not taking the song lightly? Do you not think so? Do you not see? Sabu then gave the new student a lesson on the craft of Enka. Passion? Killer B asked, scratching his head in response. He then exuberantly raised his arms. Yes, passion. As the name suggests, expressing the world of song through passion is the very heart of Enka. Of course, melodic embellishment. You must form your notes in your chest and circulate them in your nose. The giant tanuki sensed a new presence approaching the small clearing, and it growled a little. With alertness and concern, Sabu glanced at his pet and said, What is it, Panta? The sound of sandals hitting the ground reached both men as it emerged from the shadows and moved closer to the light. The man's robes flapped in the chilly air, and at the end of it, a black cloak danced with red clouds, and the men stood warily. The man's blue skin was a dead giveaway to both men as he laughed sinisterly while grasping the golden hilt of his imposing sword. The ever-violent Hoshigaki Kisame, with his menacing smile, stood in front of them. In his whole life, the man had never looked so amused. Kisame gave Killer B a sly chuckle while maintaining a playful expression. A sly grin emerged from his mouth, exposing a pointed mandible known as samahata, or sharkskin, on his shoulder. When it came to following the enticing chakra trail the eight-tailed host had left behind, his sword had been a little stubborn. Samahata was the only sentient sword ever made from kiri and the most terrifying of all the shinobi katana shichinen shu, 7 ninja swordsmen, swords. Many had claimed that the sword itself was forged from the hide of the sanbi, 3 tails, and that Yagura, as the Yondaime Mizukage, had given the blade to Kisame, his most trusted advisor. Kisame would be the only person to ever learn more about it. Furthermore, Kisame had never disclosed anything about his past because he was unwilling to discuss it and didn't care. Kisame only cared about having a good fight, and that was all he had ever wanted. I can see that your delicious chakra is well worth the trouble, Kisame said calmly, flashing that toothy smile. It was a pain too much trouble when Samahata became rather persistent in tracking you down 8 tails. With a growl, the enormous raccoon known as Panda leaned down, prepared to pounce on the Akatsuki at any moment. Kisame then lowered himself to a stance, the tip of Samahata touching the ground, and laid down his sword. At that moment, the enormous raccoon leapt directly towards Kisame, who didn't even appear to flinch. Iron Nation. Pointing to the 2 cages in front of her, an irritated Sakura asked no one in particular, why is she traveling with us again? With her arms wrapped around their Hokage's left arm and pressing it into her ample bosom, the Mizukage appeared a little too forward. Feeling disheveled, Naruto became a bag of stutters and unintelligible words from the loving gestures of the Mizukage. Water Country is located directly to our east, Sakura. It is no surprise why they would travel with us, was Shikamaru's simple response. Sakura gritted her teeth and muttered, she doesn't have to be so clingy though. Turning a page, Kakashi answered, it's just the way men in power and women work. Ever saw what happened in Konoha before Hokage? Sama left? He was reading his book in front of his subordinates and underclassmen. During the speech, Sakura seemed to remember hearing screams from both men and women, but something was standing in the small corner where the majority of the women were. Though she hadn't noticed it at first, thinking about it now, she realized that the women were seeing the Hokage at the same time as her, and that it was the same virus that had afflicted her every time she was around Sasuke. Adoring girls. She could understand the women, of course. With a striking likeness to the 4th Hokage, who wasn't in the least bit ugly, Naruto was definitely someone to look up to, and his appearance was entirely normal. Sakura said, but it still doesn't excuse her behavior. Ao bowed apologetically and scratched the back of his head, looking ashamed. Ao said, somewhat dejected, to his side, I am terribly sorry about our leader. Mizukage. Sama is just terribly distressed of the fact that she has yet to have a potential marriage candidate, she's about to age 26, and she's finding it harder and harder to search for a man to settle down with and well. Ao told the boy to straighten up, saying, oh don't be such a gloomy little boy, Shojiro. You're a man, and there are plenty of fish in the sea. Stand tall and make Kiri proud, boy. Sakura remained enraged and irritated with the woman, glaring at the two cages in front of her. Smirking, Shikamaru just shot back, "Why Sakura, don't tell me that you're Jay. Finish that sentence and I'll shove my fist down your throat." With a sigh, Shikamaru replied simply, "Whatever. Alright, let's try to laugh it off." Shikamaru was never going to treat Sakura that way again. He overlooked the Pinkette's tendency toward hysteria. He vowed that Sakura, Naruto, and Sasuke were siblings and that they shared a number of characteristics. Turning the page, Kakashi interrupted, "You should take your own advice though, Sakura. You may have the right to tell the Hokage on what he should have done, but keep in mind he's your superior now. Though I'm really proud of you for not pounding his head in between his shoulders, you know the decorum." With a frown, Sakura observed the scene before her and said, "I know. It's just I can't help worrying about him when he's like that." Neji said, "We all do, Sakura. But it's just a part of who he is. The Hokage is as reckless as Shikamaru is difficult to motivate." Sakura sighed with annoyance and gently nudged Hinata, who was using her Byakugan. "Hinata, how much further are we from the village? The sooner we get there, the better." She stammered as she said, I'm sorry, Sakura. San. I wasn't focusing on the road, but I believe that the border is still far from here." Hinata had kind of snapped out of her concentration, immediately saying, "And now we have the Hyuga heiress being jealous as well. Is it just me? Or is the brunt of the female race after me and Naruto for some reason?" Sakura just glared at Shikamaru. The Chunin with the pineapple head raised his head and uttered the word, "troublesome." Guy looked thoughtful and said, "I am curious though." Kakashi just listened. This was one of the times when Guy had perceptive opinions about certain topics that had piqued his interest. Naruto had confidence in the ability and strength of the man dressed in green, despite Guy's eccentricity. It wasn't for nothing that he was the Guken's creator and master. Why would Hokage Sama keep Danzo alive? He's a dangerous criminal, and even if he has no more subordinates at his disposal, there's nothing left for the man. Reiterated Kakashi, "It may only be a hunch, but Rokudame Sama said he has a plan to reduce Akatsuki's numbers by at least more than half. Danzo may be what is needed to lure them out." Shikamaru appeared to be frowning when he asked, "Why would the Hokage use that bastard as bait then? He's too dangerous. He knows more secrets in Konoha than the Godem. I'm sure any village that hates Konoha would be itching to get info on our village." Kakashi simply glanced at the Nara scholar and responded, "That question would solely be answered by the Hokage himself at his own discretion. The reason for using Danzo is a secret that could very well shatter Konoha's beliefs. The people were sympathetic to Sasuke when his clan was killed. Not to mention, every ninja clan in Konoha would place their utter distrust on Konoha's administrative policies, creating a civil war in Konoha worse than Danzo's usurpation." Kakashi subsequently resumed his reading assignment, though, "I suppose we can't confirm it yet. For all we know, Madara could only be lying to us to cause internal strife within Konoha while the rest of the alliance tries to fight off Akatsuki." Shikamaru didn't have to question the masked Junin any further. It would be Naruto who would eventually let them in on this matter. He hoped that the other people would experience the same emotions. Remote location. Kisame just tilted his head, amused, to see the enormous raccoon leaping directly at him, its claws extended. Then, with a growing toothy grin, the shark man swung his sword to the floor. Kisame instantly swung his blade to the side, using only his right hand to deflect the bear's massive blow that was holding Samahata. Then, with a single, powerful swing, Kisame redirected Panda's claw and kicked his left leg directly at his exposed abdomen, a straightforward move. Panta staggered from the violent blow that sent him flying out of Kisame and crashing into a few parched tree barks. Kisame grinned and said, "For a giant bear, you sure don't put up much of a fight." Kisame instinctively leaned back and watched as a lightning chakra infused pencil flew past him, only millimeters from his face, and then shot through a tree's bark, embedding itself on a rock behind it. If it can even have the futon-like ability to pierce, then those must be some serious vibrations. "I need to exercise caution with this one," Kisame said, glancing to his side to see that Killer Bee had actually been the one who had thrown the pencil. Kisame then grinned. With a swift action, Sabu pulled the massive axe that was wedged in the bark of the tree and leapt down, carrying the weapon. He tapped his left foot forward and exclaimed, "Panta is a raccoon." Then the Enka Nin yelled, "Taste my passion." as he leapt for Kisame. With a deadly blow deflected by Kisame, who had Samahata in one hand, he brandished the enormous axe and swung it vertically overhead. He instantly saw, to his left, a katana being thrown directly at him, just as the pencil had done, as it zipped through his vulnerable position. The member of Akatsuki turned to face his back and noticed that Killer Bee was rapidly getting closer to him. Kisame realized right away that he was in a vulnerable position and that the 8 tails were after him. Killer Bee, her sword dripping with lightning chakra, was about to complete the task when Kisame slid Samahata down, exposing its head as the bandages ripped off of Sabu's axe blade. Samahata and the flying sword collided as the flying sword slid on top of another bandage covering the encroaching weapon. The intended effect of Killer Bee's sword disappeared as the white cloth collapsed, revealing the monster of the hidden mist sword twisted and convulsed before him. Kisame unleashed his incredible strength on Killer Bee, sending the Enka Nin hurtling backwards and landing on Panda's stomach with a kick to the back. With a smirk that could terrify even the most seasoned shinobi, the fishman said, "Hoshigaki Kisame, do remember my name." Killer Bee laughed and said, I'm gonna beat. With my fists, I'll knock your teeth. Kisame said, amused. Samahata is getting very happy from the chakra it has been eating. Killer Bee laughed. As the area surrounding Killer Bee started to sense the chakra and the 8 tailed host's malevolent killing intent, bubbles of chakra started to emerge. Killer Bee exclaimed as he felt his strength increase as a result of the 8 tails chakra upgrade. The sight of the chakra shroud encircling the 8 tails like a second layer of rippling skin gave Sabu, who had recovered from the blow of the blue man's attack, a hopeful expression. His happiness would not last, though, as the sword in Kisame's hands shot up to new heights as it started to rip itself free of the bandages. It then stretched and twisted inside, absorbing the chakra of the tailed beast in an instant. The monstrous looking sword now had its mouth at the tip of the blade, gaping and snaring Killer Bee. With a laugh and a raise of his weapon to his shoulders, Kisame's fierce smile returned. You've done it. Your chakra has made Samahata extremely excited, he said. Kisame roared, "Oh, RRRRRRRRRHHH," and swung the sword powerfully, slicing straight at Killer Bee, who had instantly avoided the blow. The force of the impact caused fissures to appear and sent rocks hurtling upward, shattering the ground beneath the two. Killer Bee withdrew from the area of devastation as Kisame's strength leveled the terrain. After that, Samahata rose up out of the earth and erected itself as it raced toward Killer Bee. The ground beneath it created a straight fissure, and Killer Bee turned to see 4 more of the previously mentioned blades emerging from the earth to encircle him. The blades slamming toward him caused Killer Bee's head to spin around. With the force of the blow, dust and debris shot upward, causing the earth to explode thunderously. Smiling, Kisame lifted his head off the ground and rose slowly from a good distance away, hefting the blade to his shoulder. From that last attack, he had hit the Hachibi squarely, and the 8-tailed host's dependence on the Biju's chakra was essentially useless against someone like him, since the chakra cloak was useless against him. He knew how to use Samahata and defeat Jinchuriki and Biju since he had trained them in the use of chakra based attacks and area of effect jutsu, which can wreak enormous havoc. Because of their abundant chakra reserves, Jinchuriki were regarded as super soldiers in any hidden village. Kisame was prepared to combat that danger. Rather than withstand their attack's overwhelming force, Kisame would absorb theirs, use Samahata's chakra, and launch an attack. Essentially, he was trained to be the ideal counter, the anti-Jinchuriki, by his previous village. Kisame was taken aback to see a single, man-sized black sphere in the center of the smoke as he watched it sell itself. Kisame held his head high, having never encountered a Jinchuriki with this form before. Should the thick chakra echoing through the air serve as any guide, Kisame would be well advised to prepare for what was about to transpire. Just a moment ago, it was getting desperate. No matter what blows he delivered to the member of Akatsuki, that hideous sword would not stop consuming his chakra, rendering his offensive blows completely ineffective. Using Lariat with the chakra cloak was also out of the question. Lariat would be completely useless if that sword could absorb the entire power of the 8-tails chakra while wielding it. Oh no, it appears that someone more capable was sent. He's the ideal rebuttal for any of our assaults. How will we proceed? Should we attempt version 2? With a smile, Killer Bee addressed the sealed Biju within him, saying, I say we go for version 2 if we want to beat this foo. With great pleasure, Hachibi nodded to his host and declared, now for version 2. The brown Biju chakra shot out of Killer Bee just as the impact was about to hit him, enveloping him once more like a shroud. But this time, the shroud's tails started to encircle Killer Bee like a cocoon. Right now. As Kisame used Samahata to grapple with the black sphere, winds and gale forces forced him back, sending his sandals skidding to the ground. The black sphere then started to vibrate slowly, shaking gently before violently shattering like glass. When the black sphere's epicenter released a strong chakra blast, 4 black tails emerged from the center, trembling and swaying as the man known as Killer Bee emerged from the dust, now coated in a black layer from the powerful chakra of the Biju. The Biju, compressed into human form, released an acrid smoke from its mouth as the dense chakra of the Biju permeated the air, radiating with such killing intent that Sabu had to balance himself on a tree bark while Killer Bee stretched his left arm. On his shoulder, bones started to come together like porous liquid, forming the shape of a bull skull with horns. The sheer intensity of the chakra gathering on Killer Bee's left arm and forming the shape of a bull's skull caused his left arm to tremble. Kisame parried with his sword, attempting to absorb the massive chakra of the vicious clothesline attack that Killer Bee unleashed right in front of him, calling out, "Lariat." Kisame was forced back by the attack's force as he became alarmed that Samahata was suddenly becoming lethargic due to the excessive chakra being absorbed from the 8-tailed host. Nothing can overwhelm Samahata at once. At that moment, Samahata was deflected away from Kisame, and Killer Bee used all of his might to smash through Kisame, striking him squarely in the chest while shredding his cloak to pieces. The severe blow crushed his skin, muscle, blood vessels, and ribs. The force of Killer Bee's blow knocked Kisame back, sending him flying through the trees and rocks and landing on a massive tree, his chest gushing blood. Kisame started hacking blood out of his mouth. But in spite of the tremendous and agonizing pain he is going through right now, the monster of the hidden mist managed to smile and say, "That was a good attack. You got me." Killer Bee's chakra cloak died down, and he sighed a little in relief. He turned to face Kisame, who was grinning despite the fatal wound. Killer Bee reached for one of his swords and lunged toward Kisame, ready to kill him. Killer Bee abruptly stopped upon witnessing Samahata abruptly leap from the ground and return to Kisame's hands. "Hee, you didn't think it was over just like that?" Kisame inquired as Samahata's handle extended and slithered toward his hands. The chakra that had been absorbed earlier started to heal Kisame's wounds, sealing the incision on his chest as bones started to regenerate and reform, tendons and muscles started to attach and realign themselves, and a brand new skin once again covered his body. Smoke danced to the site of the injury, and Kisame drew in a deep breath and grinned. "I get stronger the stronger my opponent is. I never get tired and I can't be defeated. That's why they call me the beast with no tail. His sword. It's his most lethal weapon. B, if you can grab that sword, you can utterly stop him," was Sabu's instant deduction of Kisame's ability. Then Kisame clapped his hands together, and as he stretched his neck and puffed up his cheeks, Sabu could actually feel how much chakra Kisame was molding out of the fishman's mouth. Kisame yelled menacingly as water gushed like a raging tsunami in one hurling motion. Sweden. Daibakaswishuha. Water release. Great exploding water colliding wave. Rising to a height of 50 feet, the raging tsunami tore through the forest like a collapsed dam, carrying Killer Bee, Sabu, and Ponta with it in its tidal wave. In the middle of the violent waves that abruptly submerged much of the forest, Kisame and Samahata united. His back and head developed fins, and a tail sprouted from the tip of his buttocks. Scales started to further define. His feet and fingers developed webbed patterns, and 3 sets of gills sprouted from either side of his neck. Kisame's smile got bigger and his appearance much more predatory. As he continued, Kisame menacingly hovered above Sabu and Killer Bee, saying, "Grab my sword, you say? I'd let you do that. If you can separate it from my body, that is." Leaning forward, Kisame swam in the direction of Killer Bee, unleashing his unparalleled underwater speed. The 8-tailed host quickly reverted to his compressed beast form and swam through the water's dome to grab the Enka Nin and his companion before making a mad dash for Sabu and Ponta. Kisame started to accelerate and veer in the direction of Killer Bee, saying, "You can't escape. You're too much in a disadvantage. Damn it, B. He's faster underwater. We can't run forever, we'll die faster this way." At that moment, the 8 Tailed Host grabbed the underwater prison's edge and quickly swerved to the left while swimming as quickly as he could. Killer Bee pursued Sabu and Panda after seeing Kisame for the first time. The 8. Tailed Host swore inwardly and swam away, revealing needles poised to stab the two through Kisame's forearm fins. Killer Bee had moved to the front unexpectedly, but not before Kisame turned to face the 8. Tailed Host and smiled, revealing Killer Bee beneath the black chakra cloak in one of his famously cunning and playful dangerous looks. Kisame said, "You fell for it," as he approached Killer Bee and gave him a side of the fin bump. Killer Bee's 4 cephalopod tentacles suddenly protruded from her tails, and she started strangling Kisame as far away from Sabu and Panda as she could. "I hope you aren't having trouble breathing. It would be so bothersome to explain to my boss why you suffocated from my Suiro Sei Modori no Jutsu, water prison shark dance." "Of course, I tend to make some mistakes along the way," Kisame laughed as the cephalopods once again withdrew into the transparent chakra cloak as soon as the two were safe. Killer Bee started expelling bubbles from his lungs, finding it increasingly difficult to breathe as his chakra levels decreased. He just had to make sure he got away from this man as quickly as possible. He could still perform a full transformation. Gathering chakra in his mouth, Killer Bee leaned his body back slightly and puffed out his cheeks as he started to spew ink all over Kisame's area. Suddenly, a black haze had descended upon the entire water dome, engulfing the massive mass of water. Killer Bee swam as far as he could after spreading the ink. But that wouldn't happen because Kisame, after merging with Samahata, gained the ability to sense the chakras surrounding him and determine their proximity. Just as Bee was about to reach the edge of the dome, Kisame veered in the direction of the 8-tailed host and grappled him right away. External. The ink spray caused the dome's normally clear blue water to abruptly turn completely black. The water then burst and popped like a bubble. Then, as Samahata started to assume its sword form once more, Kisame's form withdrew. Killer Bee had leapt back at the unexpected turn of events and his chakra cloak was activated again. This time, the 8-tailed host yelled, "Man, was I filled with dread, I thought I was dead," as he opened his chakra. The chakra then grew larger as the tails started to transform back into cephalopods. At its highest point, the chakra continued to grow and solidify, and Killer Bee persisted as the 8-tails form had fully materialized. "Fish face, allow me to explain my current situation to you." Then, red and blue globules of chakra appeared from the right-tailed beast, which started gathering them at its mouth. The chakra condensed until it resembled the black sphere it had earlier, then the ball compressed, and the energy became volatile as the chakra surge grew more violent by the second. At that moment, the 8-tails bit the tiny chakra orb and pointed it towards Kisame. "I'm the undisputed king of destruction." Kisame reacted quickly because he sensed that the attack would be severe enough to disintegrate him all the way down to his cell. He raised his Samahata and leapt, aiming for the beast's head. As the energy for its own Imari, menacing ball, reached maximum levels, the 8-tailed ox raised its head. When the charge-up concluded, the enormous beast leaned back slightly, braced its forearms on the ground, and released the blast with its mouth. Whack! The 8-tailed beast was surrounded by winds exceeding 100 km per hour as a result of the force of its recoil, which caused the ground beneath it to give way and shatter and embed the beast below. This caused a loud explosion that could be heard throughout the forest. A hole was opened in the cloud filled sky by the blast, and a stream of red light streaked upward through the winter sky, forcing some of the heavy clouds to give way. Killer Bee questioned, "Did we get him?" as the beast's head peered around. The voice had cut in, "Did what get who?" with an abruptness. Immediately, Kisame emerged atop one of the enormous bull's horns, while Samahata, who was now bigger than Kisame, was securely perched on the fisherman's shoulders. "That was a pretty nasty attack just now. If it wasn't for the fact that I anticipated such an obvious attack, I doubt I'd be standing here down to the last cell." Keeping Samahata above his head, Kisame laughed. Kisame yelled, "You lose, 8-tails," and struck the 8-tails' head with Samahata. The 8-tailed ox howled as its chakra was siphoned away, and as Kisame slashed down, the crater below caved in lower and the 8-tailed beast withdrew back to its host. Chakra started to be absorbed by the blade. As he lifted his sword once more and prepared to cut down the blade, Kisame grinned and said, "It would be such a pain if you could move. It's better to cut off your leg and so that you can't escape." A shuriken was hurled from behind Kisame as he was ready to slash down on Killer B's leg. Startled, he leaned his head to the left and spun around to discover 3 Kumo Nin had materialized nearby. Kisame yelled, gesturing for Samahata to remove B's legs, saying, "You're too late." The moment the blade was ready to strike the earth, Samahata locked onto the surface, preventing him from completing the task at hand. Samahata is not interested in harming the target. Kisame was displeased with the abrupt change in circumstances and clicked his tongue. Kisame, enraged by his situation, punched Samahata in the hilt when it disobeyed him. Then, as if to warn him, countless beams of light energy started to rain down on his area, and the heavy sword fell to the side. Ranton. Reiza Sakasu. Storm Release. Laser Circus. With Kisame being surrounded by light stream projectiles and being pursued by ferocious dogs, Darui let out a shout. As a ray of light passed him and burst, Kisame dodged just in time, forcing him to move away from the area where Killer B had laid. As Samahata's handle slithered and wriggled its way to Killer B, Kisame saw that it had made its way to the side of the 8-tailed host and started resupplying him with the chakra he had previously absorbed. He was a little afraid that his sword would be used in this way. He had been alerted to Samahata's excessive indulgence by the former Mizukage. He could never trust it if he continued to absorb chakra from just one source. He was unaware of this, though, because his previous encounters with the blade had led him to believe that Samahata's craving for chakra was unquenchable. It so happened that the 8 tails possessed a great deal of chakra and employed it extensively in his attacks. It appeared that Samahata had a maximum amount it could take in at this point. The 8-tailed host felt his chakras reload and slowly got to his feet. "Now that your ugly sword is through, get ready for round 2. Killer B exclaimed, standing straight up as the chakra he had previously lost came back to him. He grinned and extended his arms. Then his brother yelled, "B. I go high, you go low." His first response was, "Gothka, bro." The two approaching ninja had surrounded themselves in their own auras, so Kisame quickly sequenced his hands into a water jutsu. Sweden. Gukuden no Jutsu. Water Release. Great Shark Bullet. Kisame then leaned back once more, causing another tidal wave to form inside the dense wooded area as liquid started to collect in his mouth and spit out, smashing on the ground. The water swelled fiercely, resembling a massive shark thrashing through the air, roughly the same size as Ponta, the enormous raccoon. The brothers who had jumped earlier were then sent diving towards them, and it landed on top of the water. The colossal water shark dove toward the Raikage and Killer B, splattering and exploding as it came into contact with them, scattering water droplets all over the floor. Kisame saw the Raikage standing in front of him and grinned. Everywhere his neck could bend normally, he looked around. With his right arm extended, the Raikage charged at him, and Kisame suddenly noticed something on his back due to the sudden spike in chakra. Killer B, a clothesline aimed directly at the back of his neck with his right arm extended. Double Lariat. Kisame had abruptly extended his arms and used his hands to block the Lightning Brothers' blitz attacks, causing both brothers to yell. Kisami's skin started to eat away at the Biju cloak and lightning as his bones felt the strength of both brothers literally shattering and cracking. That was good. Kisame laughed. Kisame was pushing the attack away from his person, but he could feel the pain running through his hands. The two brothers increased the force of their pushing as they gaped at Kisami's strength. When his arms finally gave out, Kisame laughed and exclaimed, "So, this is it, EH." Kisame let out a final cry, "That was a great match." Straight above. In an instant, both arms had touched Kisame on the side of his neck and chest. As the Killer Bee pierced Kisami's skin, it tore it open, splintering Kisami's ribs into sharp fragments and embedding itself in the heart and lungs along with fat and muscle. Blood gushed from the opposite side, severing the carotid artery and jugular vein and spewing the life, giving liquid like a blocked hose nozzle. The Raikage's attack tore the spinal cord like a twig once it connected to the neck, severing it from the row of bones and disconnecting the nerves inside from the sudden rattling of bones. Both brothers let out a sigh of relief as the corpse of the man with blue skin collapsed into a heap on the ground. With a tick on his shoulder, the Raikage went up to his brother and said, "You got a lot of explaining to do, B." After that win, B could only feel his excitement wane as his brother's shadow loomed large before him. Killer B somehow believed that he knew what he had forgotten. Konoha. For Sakura, at least, it had taken 2 agonizingly long days to get to Konoha and split up so that the Kiri delegates could head straight for the southeast coast that led to water country. To put it mildly, the trip itself was nothing remarkable. However, there was even a moment during the trip when Hinata and the Mizukage gave each other a sharp glare to express how deeply unhappy they were with one another. Naturally, Naruto, who had attempted to defuse the situation and was the reason behind their growing hostility, caused things to get worse. The Mizukage took Naruto's right arm with her own and held it firmly in her bosom, saying, "Oh, Hokage. Dono. Please make sure to tame some of your subordinates when you do get back to your village, they tend to go out of line in the chain of command." The woman would kick Sakura's ass for it, and it might even spark an international incident, but Sakura resisted the urge to say anything that would provoke a proper fight with the Mizukage. "We are not going out of my bounds, Mizukage. Sama, but please show that you are a dignified leader of your village. We are just worried for our leader, please refrain from displaying such." The Mizukage pointed her index finger at the pinkhead and said, "Hokage. Dono, now do you see? No respect for your position." As soon as Naruto felt those mounds slashing his arm, he appeared alarmed. Mizukage. Dono, they're just concerned about my well. Being so, he said, chuckling nervously. Chan. What? Naruto exclaimed right away, completely perplexed. "Call me, Chan, Hokage. Dono." Following that small incident, Naruto found it more and more uncomfortable to engage with the Kiri people. They were pleasant enough, but he felt uncomfortable because his female subordinates were staring at him with hawk-like eyes. When they came to a fork in the road and realized they would have to part ways in order to reach Kiri, it was actually kind of a relief. When they arrived at Konoha's gates, they were met by a wealthy blonde who appeared to have overindulged in alcohol the previous night as she crossed her arms. "Brat. You've got a lot of explaining to do. Who you calling a brat, you old bat? Shouldn't you be taking your afternoon nap?" The other blonde shot back in a hurried manner. Tsunade yelled, "Old bat. That's it, you little mongrel. When I'm through with you, your mouth won't be the only thing closed shut. Oh yeah. Why don't you just stick to knitting then? You wouldn't want to strain your back from overworking." Tsunade screamed, clutching her fists, "You're dead." Naruto turned pale as he realized what Tsunade could do with a single finger flick. He was about to flee when the older woman tackled him, locked his head, and started rubbing it with her hands. She exclaimed, her smile still ruffling her successor's head, "You little rascal, I knew you had it in you to show that decrepit old crone who's boss around here." With a smile on his face, Naruto said, "Good to see that you're awake, Chan." Tsunade herself cracked a grin and replied, "Ha. Am I ever glad that you're back, Naruto. Now let's get to your office while we talk. You're going to have to tell me what happened during the summit and how you subdued that old fart." After that, Naruto sent his group on their way, promising them a well-earned nap. After they arrived back at the desk, Naruto took a seat at the back, resting his elbows on the table and covering his face with his hands. Tsunade put a hand on her chin and started to think, "I see, so that's why Sasuke is coming after the advisors. I can't just let this slide, Chan. They managed to usurp control from Old Man Sandaime more than once, and I'm sure that they could have done so during your time as well. All that it needed was for Danzo to authorize it and let him handle the problem himself. Now with Root exterminated, I can honestly say that we have them cornered." Naruto was getting serious about it. Gigi told me once that the government exists for the people. Although Itachi was blamed for the incident, there were still many people that could have responded the night of the massacre. The patrolling Anbu were replaced with either Danzo's men or were given orders to stay away from the scene of the crime, and the old man was given no choice. "I can't trust them, Chan. I can't trust the advisors without going behind my back, I need to replace them." Although what they did could be understandable, the Sandaime could have developed terms and compromises with the Uchiha clan. "We didn't give them a chance, Chan. They already knew what was going to happen further ahead, yet they didn't do anything. There were no negotiations that could have been done, but even the old man and with his peace talks, most of the proposals that they sent were denied. Even if the Hokage was the one who authorized those proposals, they would utterly be rejected or be destroyed by one of the three. Simply put, they wanted to keep the Uchiha in line." Tsunade said, "So you're doing this," but Naruto interrupted her. "I'm doing this in order to prevent another massacre. Who's to say that they would stop with the Uchiha? There are still prominent clans here that are infamous throughout the village, mostly the Hyuga. They have the power and influence, they also have money, and although the clan has been given reins and ministrations on its own, they could fear for the day that at least one of these clans would eventually turn out the same as the Uchiha. Tsunade said, I knew that Independent Clan Act bullshit was asking for trouble. That law was made during the Nidaime dynasty and was created concurrently with the police force. Its purpose was to grant privacy to each prominent Konoha ninja clan regarding matters pertaining to their clan, thereby enabling each clan to discuss internal issues and resolve disputes swiftly and independently, without needing the Hokage's consent. And as far as Tsunade could remember, the last few days of the Nidaime's implementation saw the creation of the law and the police force. It implied that those few days marked the advisor's succession. There's only one conclusion that Tsunade could surmise from it. Those two never did trust the other ninja clans like Danzo did. The Independent Clan Act was just there to isolate the remaining clans from the politics of the village itself. As long as these clans don't try to meddle with the politics enlisted in the village, they were safe. The Uchiha, who have almost one-third of the forces during that time, tried that and the establishment of the police force was given to them. It kept them busy thinking it could place them into a power that's comparable to the Senju. Tsunade went on to say, if I know Sarutobi Sensei, he'd have kept notes of his most memorable decision-making policies when he became Hokage along with a lot of prominent events. We need gather them and study it here. If those notes are still present, we can have enough incriminating evidence to convict Homura and Kaharu. That being said, Tsunade grinned and remarked to the blonde, good luck with the paperwork, brat. I'm glad I'm finally out of that hellhole. Just before getting up and opening the door to leave the office. Just as she was about to close the door, Naruto moaned and said, don't remind me, Ba-chan. At that point, she laughed. Naruto turned around to see his village after Tsunade left, sighed, and slumped in his chair. He had raised his right hand slightly without any problems, and a member of the Anbu, disguised as a bird, had leapt down. Then, as Naruto was speaking, the masked agent had knelt before his commander. Tori, guard Tsunade with your team. Root may be gone, but I don't want to take chances. There could still be remnants of Danzo's forces that are in contact with the two advisors. I want you guard Tsunade while she searches for old man Hokage's notes. While you're at it, tell Sai to come to the tower when he can. I need an assignment to be done with his help. With a nod, Tori disappeared from view. After getting up from his chair, Naruto left the office. He had to retrain in his kendo, which seemed like a lot of work, but the more time he could put in during his free time, the more advantage they would have in this war. The first place he thought of was the land of his fellow student under Jiraiya. He needed to talk to some of the minor leaders about what had happened. The more allies he had, the more likely it was that they would win this war. Omegakure no Sato. Unidentified place. Sasuke was awakened by a terrible ache that spread throughout his body. He carefully sat up, and when he opened his eyes, he saw that he was in a strange place with perfectly symmetrical ground. Under a painted sky of dark blue, the area surrounding him was dotted with squares, rectangles, and quadrilaterals. Well, Sasuke, even though it was a tough job, good work. We've rattled them up pretty well. And good job in obtaining Susanoo, he said, as Karen revealed Madara standing in front of him after a spiral twist of the area in front of him. Sasuke briefly squinted, aware that his vision was becoming worse and that his eyesight was blurring. He had never struck any of the 5 cages with a clean blow when he had faced them off. Even though the 5 of them were superior to each other individually, it was like climbing an insurmountable mountain when they were all on the same field. When he realized he had faced the 5 cages, his own foolishness nearly caused him to pass out. What had motivated him to act in such a way? How far did he push himself toward madness? For nothing had he done severe damage to his eyes. Now, how was he going to get even with the elders? How is he going to bring his family the justice he so desperately wanted? For the sake of Itachi? Would it simply come to this? Willing himself blind before he could murder them? Not at all. He's not going to allow it to happen. This is not how he will let it end. He would force himself to see things from Itachi's perspective in order to fulfill his duty to uphold the truth that Itachi had witnessed. Via Itachi's perspective. Madara, give me Itachi's eyes, I want to place his eyes in mine. Just a smile beneath his spiraling orange mask appeared on Madara's face. Sasuke was drawing nearer to his perfect pawn. Sasuke's adjustment to the new vision and the retraining of his Mangekyo techniques would set back his plans for a good 6 months, but in the end, it would all be worthwhile because his plans would undoubtedly succeed. There was plenty of time. 6 months was no reason to rush things. As I sit here and type this, I ask myself the question that has been bothering me for nearly a week. When did I start to lose my heart? I could feel the gnawing sensation of what I had authorized to my men as I stood in front of the room of the one child I swore to protect upon the death of my successor. There was nothing else for me to do. Either that or murder him. Even if it meant spilling my own blood, I would refuse to shed the innocence. Young, naive, and pure, Naruto is. His mother is his only companion and source of comfort. How could I have been so stupid as to have it taken away from him? I should have sealed the envelope rather than the Yondaime, but I've allowed my misbehaving apprentice to live. It was my duty. I've made a lot of errors and poor decisions that should have been avoided. Nevertheless, I catch myself engaging in actions that risk repeating the same crimes. The remarks made by my instructors and Jiraiya, one of my students, frequently brought back memories of my childhood. Good intentions pave the road to hell. In contrast to the rest of his kind, I want Naruto to grow up normally and without any mental health issues. Not as this village's weapon, cut off from the family that I have always considered each and every one of my soldiers and my people to be. I have frequently shown heartlessness. I would be different, but only to the boy I vowed to protect. His life is more significant, and losing his mother was a devastating blow from which he never fully recovered as a young child. I would be forced to reinforce the boy's mental stability because otherwise he would become even more unstable and miserable. Despite the fact that I think it is extremely unlikely that Danzo was not somehow involved in Kushina's death, I just can't bring myself to convict him and dissolve Root. He is surrounded by elite followers. Too much chaos would result from Root's death, leaving his men unsure of what to do. There would probably be a massacre. I'll do everything in my power to keep this village safe, but as Danzo and I get older, death is inevitable, so I might as well prolong his life a little bit longer until I figure out a way to stop him. It did not help to disband his underground forces. In order to kill the snake, I must cut off its head. Hiruzen Sarutobi. Tsunade shut her eyes, deep in thought. Among all the leaders of Konoha in the past, Sarutobi had the most difficult times to prove his worth and mettle. Sarutobi. Sensei had many regrets in his life, a lot of sadness radiating from him, and he faced it. How difficult it was to actually strengthen his resolve every time he makes a very difficult decision concerning the village. Tsunade was compelled to sympathize with her mentor's predicament. Too many choices had tested Sarutobi's capacity for leadership. Because he was so devoted to his village, the Sandaime thought of them as his own children. Tsunade was reading Sarutobi Sensei's journals while leaning back on the seat that the current patriarch of the Sarutobi clan had lent her, and she couldn't help but smile. She thought back to her younger self, hot-headed and bold, self-conscious of her appearance. Accompanying her was the gaunt and stoic genius, Orochimaru, who was indifferent to others but still had the courage to support them in their hour of need. She remembered Jiraiya so well, the perverse, mischievous little bastard that she beat up every day for trying to peek on her in the hot springs. Next was their brilliant teacher, Sarutobi Sensei, who served as a mentor to the legendary Sannin, one of Konoha's greatest legends. Back then, he was younger, with his hair thrown back, kind yet calculating, patient, and perceptive. It was him who continually encouraged her to have confidence in herself and to wait for her flower to bloom. In addition, it was he who forced Orochimaru to move forward after his parents passed away. Even though Sarutobi also accompanied the little hellion on their adventures at the hot springs, Sarutobi Sensei was the one who revealed Jiraiya's serious side and helped him grow into a powerful man. Though their former master may be respectable, Tsunade was still incensed at his behavior. He remains a closet pervert. Tsunade chuckled a little and a few tears trickled out of her eyes. Her team became her associates, who later became close friends, making those memories among her happiest childhood moments. One of the things that Tsunade smiled at the thought of was the closeness that the three of them had developed back then. Although Jiraiya was then resentful of his teammate, she recalled how they visited Orochimaru's parents at their graves and gave flowers. Jiraiya said he would feel like a complete ass for not paying respect to a teammate's departed loved one. She remembered Nawaki's passing. Orochimaru and Jiraiya supported her. Orochimaru was direct, but he had told her that Nawaki would pass away quickly and painlessly. It was Jiraiya who consoled her and instructed Orochimaru to reveal the graphic details at a later time. They were there when Tsunade carried her two heavily plastered teammates to her apartment, and Jiraiya was left on his own after his family disowned him, drinking down to an incredible 20 sake bottles. Tsunade heard the door open a bit, so she got to her feet. The grandson of her former boss appeared in the corner of her eye and said, "Godem, that guy with the bird mask is waiting for you outside." Yeah, tell him to wait for a moment while I seal this in a scroll. Your granddad had a lot of journals kept in here, and we need these in order to do something. Konohamaru raised his eyebrows. I still don't get why you and the boss want to read all of Gigi's books. He writes like watching paint dry. He was boring when he wrote this stuff. With a laugh, Tsunade remarked, "Well, kid, you'd be surprised just how interesting your granddad was when he was with Jiraiya." Are you serious? Konohamaru inquired. Tsunade replied, nodding, "Yes, then go back to training or whatever you're about to do. The Hokage's seat doesn't wait for anyone." Konohamaru nodded after that and left. Now, what to do? I suppose I could read more about Sarutobi Sensei's earlier years in office. I remember he met his wife during his reign on the 3rd year. Then again, we need these documents pronto. Oh well, I'll read about those later. Tsunade took a scroll and started to seal them inside after that. A soft, thunderous boom reverberated across the overcast, gray sky. There will be rain, Tsunade thought. Tower of Hokage. Once again supervising the reconstruction effort, Naruto sat down and wiped the perspiration from his brow. The downtown area was progressing nicely, the tourist attractions were being repaired, and in a few more months, a new hotel would be rising beside the hot springs district. Thanks to Yamato. Taiko, Ichiraku Ramen was already constructed and stopped there before returning here. At this moment, he sighed with satisfaction and started going through the next batch of documents that his clones had been organizing since his earlier disappearance. Naruto recalled that in order to establish a war council, all of the current Konoha ninja clans would have to be involved. In order to discuss the impending war with Tsunade and the heads of the ninja clan, he had asked his assistant to arrange a meeting time. In order to prepare their nation as well, he also needed to speak with Tazuna and the others about this as soon as possible. Shortly after, Inoichi, Sai, and Morino Ibiki, one of Konoha's resident sadists, entered. When Ibiki cleared his throat, Naruto looked up and smiled, saying, "Good, you three are here, there's something I need all of you to listen to." "Neko, that includes you." Following her final utterance, the Anbu member leapt to the ground and knelt before the Hokage, her purple hair cascading down. Then Naruto started, "I trust Danzo is kept quietly within his cell, and isn't talking much, is he?" To which Ibiki answered, "No, Hokage. Sama, he isn't." Naruto replied, "All right, Inoichi-san, I want you to do something for me in there." With an eyebrow raised, Inoichi said, "I want you to purge all of Konoha's secrets from Danzo's head, all of them after probing some that you don't know, including the Uchiha massacre." Naruto then leaned in closer, placing his elbows on the table and covering the lower half of his face with his hands. "What are you talking about, Hokage? Sama? Everyone knows about that incident. The massacre wasn't exactly private unless..." Inoichi raised an eyebrow in response. Then Naruto turned to face the 4 people in the room, stood, and crossed his arms. "What I'm about to tell you must not leave this room, understand? Until I deem it safe should all of you state this without a problem. This class secret should never ever leave this room." Inoichi was going to inquire, but Naruto interrupted with, 3 days ago, during the Cage Summit, we were attacked by none other than Uchiha Sasuke." All of them nodded. They all continued to hesitate as Inoichi cast a downward glance and said, "Ino will be upset by this." During his attack, Uchiha Madara made an unexpected appearance. "I know that you may think that it was impossible, but he was there. He told me one thing that made me come to speak with all of you here in this tone." Naruto balled his fists and his hands shook. "I don't know if he was lying or not, but don't put your trust in him at one moment. It's bad enough that we have to do the cleanup for people like Danzo. I don't want us fighting each other because of their mistake. Never doubt that for one moment, that Sarutobi Gigi tried his best to protect the Uchiha clan until the very end. I only ask you to continue your faith in the system, I'll try to make things right." Ibiki frowned as he asked, "Hokage Sama, are you saying that the government has had a hand with the Uchiha massacre?" Naruto didn't respond, remaining silent for a brief period of time before continuing. More specifically, Danzo ordered the genocide of the Uchiha clan in order to stop the coup d'état that the said clan tried to do. He made sure that the deed be done and used Uchiha Itachi as the scapegoat for his plans. I know what all of you are thinking right now. Why would they need to do that when negotiations could have been done? Like I said, Sarutobi. Gigi did what he could, but in the end, every talk ended with failure. Probe his mind, Inoichi. San, find out the truth on the night of the massacre and then wipe it. Danzo's body is useless. Whatever chakra technique he tries won't work. Until he can find a seals specialist, it would remain unlikely. Ibiki. San, after Inoichi. San is done, guard him as minimal as you can. Find out if he still has subordinates left around here. I'm sure they're all in hiding in preparation for his escape if there are remnants here. Sai, since you were the one that leaked the information about Danzo's plans, I want you to remain silent around Danzo. I trust you with this most crucial part of the plan, Naruto said, turning to face Sai and the female Anbu member after the two nodded. And that is? Inquired Sai. To act like a rude loyalist and free Danzo once his memory is wiped clean of the secrets that Konoha has. What? Hokage. Sama, that's dangerous. Danzo may not become a ninja anymore, but his remaining followers still are, if you let him escape. The first thing he's going to do is go after you, Inoichi thought, alarm bells ringing in his head. Naruto elaborated, I know that, which is why Neko is here. She and her team are going to keep me safe if ever that happens, and they will act like hunter ninjas once Danzo escapes the village. Ibiki responded, what's the purpose of this if we're just going to kill him in the end? To be honest, he found the gamble the Hokage was telling them intriguing. It was extremely dangerous. Many factors are at stake, and for what purpose? He didn't know, but he was going to find out somehow. In addition, he felt a sense of excitement about the entire situation, as if adrenaline were suddenly gushing out of him like a waterfall. It was satisfying. We aren't going to kill him, Ibiki. San. He'll become the bait to lure out a bigger fish. Ibiki grinned this time, something that piqued his interest. That was nothing like the silly, amiable smile of the Hokage. This is Ibiki, sadistic, resentful, evil, and unhappy Ibiki. If he smiled, it could only mean one thing: he was enjoying the suffering of others. Danzo was one such person, which added to the sweetness of the situation. That startled a few people in the office, and even though the Hokage appeared to shiver, he quickly recovered his composure. Right, we are going to use Danzo as bait to lure out Uchiha Sasuke and his group. If he kills Danzo, then it's better for us also. If we could pull this off, Akatsuki would lose more than half of its remaining ninja. They were taken aback by that. Given how risky everything with Akatsuki was, it made sense that he had an Anbu member debriefed in the office. Neko, are there at least one kind of every type of specialist there's within your squad? Neko gave an explanation. We have a sensor, diversion specialist, infiltrator, sabotage, and assassin, direct assault, scout and tracker. Good, I need all of your team ready once I give the go signal along with the Niju Shodai. I want your team to perform as Sai's backup if things get dangerous for him. You four are dismissed. As soon as the three left through the door, Sai asked Naruto, I don't understand. Why are you placing this much faith in me, Naruto? Before shutting it behind him, Naruto simply replied with a grin, it's because I trust you, Sai. You were the one to mention about Danzo's plans and in turn, save our lives. I'm grateful. Don't worry. I didn't say anything about your actions to that bastard. You don't need to prove yourself to me anymore. You've done a great job, go take a rest and prepare yourself later on. Expressing gratitude to Naruto, Sai could only smile and say, thank you, Hokage. Sama. Leave, said Naruto, grinning and shaking his head. Sai left after saying that. Well now, I'm surprised you managed to pull that off, never thought you had it in you, brat. Naruto pivoted and discovered Tsunade seated beside the desk, holding a scroll. When Naruto questioned, I take it you're done finding Gigi's notes. Tsunade replied, yeah, though there are some things that you're better off not knowing. Naruto inquired, about Gigi erasing my memories of my mother? Tsunade was left speechless and staring at Naruto with wide eyes, to which he candidly replied, Danzo told me. Well, then it was useless. Tsunade let out a sigh, opening the scroll to reveal its contents. Numerous journals soon accumulated on his desk. Observing the enormous sum, Naruto pondered whether he ought to end the matter immediately and sell everything with a few blows to the head. Sighing, Naruto joined his hands to form a few kage bunshin and let them start reading while he sat down and started reading aloud to Tsunade. Naruto started reading and could feel, through Hiruzen's writings, the regrets he had for his life, how forced and depressing his decisions had been, and how much of the second and third ninja wars he had been a part of. Sarutobi expressed his sorrow about the people he had sent to their deaths on every page of his journal. At the time, Naruto had no idea what it meant to be a Hokage. Instead, he had gradually come to understand leadership through his experiences. But now, at last, he realized what Sarutobi had needed to do all along. Sarutobi had to keep the cold, stern face he frequently wore when speaking of his ninjas because every choice he had made that went against his principles had been regrettable, completely devastating to the man, and left a hole in his heart. However, Sarutobi was utterly thrilled when it came to kids. He had read about how the elderly man used to come see him and his mother when Naruto was a baby, frequently checking in on him whenever the old man had a chance. Now that Naruto understood, he could see why the old man had to make the difficult decision to clear his mind. Sarutobi, the kage with the longest reign, had evidence that the Hokage was always willing to sacrifice the many for the few. That specific philosophy was something Naruto had known since Sasuke had left the village. Although his former teacher described it differently, it had the same qualities. But to him, many did not equal all. Forget about your friend, he's a traitor now, and all traitors must be killed to keep this village safe. After realizing all of this, Naruto began comparing himself to Sarutobi. It appeared that they shared enough similarities for Naruto to comprehend Sarutobi's position quite well. That Naruto never once questioned the elderly monkey gave him some relief. But his teammates? That was a whole other story, though, as Sarutobi wrote in his journal about how the power that altered Kaharu and Homura made him feel betrayed and depressed, and how he could no longer sense their former presence. Naruto felt a storm of rage erupt inside him as he and Tsunade quickly read through each journal, reading about Sarutobi's account of the night his mother passed away. Killing intent emanated from the seams in the room as Naruto clenched his fists tightly on the table. "Calm down, brat, you can have your turn when we can take them," Tsunade said, glancing at Naruto. As he read the passages Sarutobi had written, Naruto gritted his teeth. Every admission of regret Sarutobi made fueled Naruto's rage, which was now raging like a forest fire, consuming all of Naruto's patience. As Naruto stood up from his seat, all he could say was, "I need to get out." Tsunade, on the other hand, just stared blankly at the boy, saying, "Fine, cool your head out there, but I want you back here when the war council is about to start. I'm not the one who has to explain to the clan heads that the 5 main hidden villages in the land are iron are currently at war with Akatsuki right now." With a silent closing of the door, the blonde assured the older woman, "Don't worry, I'll be back." He didn't even look back as the door completely obscured her view. With all she could manage, Tsunade muttered, "Don't do anything stupid, brat." Regarding Naruto, a blonde with an angry expression strolled through the village, hands clenched into fists in his pockets. He was running straight toward the memorial stone, the stone of fallen heroes, the names of the fallen carved into the rock, whether or not they had died serving Konoha. Kakashi had his hands in his pockets and was already standing in front of the stone when he got there. When Naruto looked up, he heard thunder roaring through the cloud filled sky once more. He moved to stand in front of the memorial and knelt down, noting that it was beginning to get fairly windy. "Are you here to pay your respects, Hokage Sama?" Kakashi asked. Naruto simply replied, "Sort of. That, and I'm looking for something, or rather, someone's name," as he touched the stone with his right hand. When Kakashi asked, "Your mother, I presume?" Naruto nodded without turning to face his teacher. Kakashi continued menacingly, "I've tried many times to find her name in it, but it wasn't there. I even tried to find her grave, but there was none." The Junin looked up and saw the rain starting to pour down on the village, pelting the Hokage and the copy ninja with its sudden downpour. Thunder and lightning also boomed into the gray, cloud-filled skies. "This is disgusting," Naruto said, his hands caressing the hard crystal in front of him with a restrained but unmistakably angry tone. "I can't believe how two-faced these people are when they place the names of the Uchiha that the higher-ups killed all those years ago, yet, they didn't even put the name of my mother who hasn't done a thing against the village." At that moment, when Danzo admitted his role in his mother's death, Naruto experienced the same emotions as he did upon the death of his master. He felt the fire of anger rising inside him once more, but this time it wasn't the same kind of rage. No. This was pure hate and malice, the same emotion that the nine-tailed beast and Sasuke had both thrived on. For once, Naruto came dangerously close to succumbing to temptation and using his hands to kill them. Naruto was not interested in the three people who had harmed them getting their comeuppance now. No. There was only one thing he needed to satisfy his thirst for vengeance. Joy. In order to honor his own mother, who was also killed, and to feel better, he wanted to kill them. Naruto wanted blood, really wanted to ram his fists into their chests like weak cardboard for once. As the rain kept falling on the village, the blonde got up from the memorial stone without saying anything and with his hands clenched into fists. Now, Naruto's hair was wet and damp, matching the rest of his outfit. The blonde turned around and gave Kakashi a brief, nonverbal wave before flickering off. It didn't look good for Kakashi, considering what Naruto had his sights set on. Ichiraku Ramen. Konohamaru had just completed his training with Goku, the tri-poled staff. Changing Monkey, which had been cut short by the rain, and had been gradually making his way through the learning process to become an expert in element manipulation. Although Ebisu Sensei had intended to postpone this type of training for a while, closet pervert Sensei was going to start their training in it sooner than anticipated because Konohamaru possessed so few jutsu, and they are also far too dangerous for him. He was overjoyed to discover that his affinity was more closely aligned with lightning. Granted, it was unfortunate that the boss had the upper hand, but Ebisu Sensei had pointed out that this simply suggested that he was more likely to pick up Raiden-based jutsu more quickly and that anyone could master a secondary element. Konohamaru was about to eat some ramen when he dug through his pocket for one of the coupons his mother had given him. Though he would have liked to have done something different, Ichiraku was the closest to the regular training area that Ebisu Sensei and his group visited. Who was Ichiraku to complain? After a rigorous training program from the Monkey Summon, you'll eat anything that is near to you. Besides, he just so happened to be nearby. When he eventually located his coupon in his side pocket, he glanced to the side to see that it was the one that was posted outside the ramen stand. Boss? Come to get some ramen? Yeah, decided to have some. The paperwork is driving me crazy and I have a lot of cleanup to do, Naruto nodded as he walked into the shop. Bah, it isn't like you have a problem sorting them out, your clones are like the ultimate all-purpose jutsu, Konohamaru said, raising an eyebrow in response. Naruto laughed a little at the young Sarutobi's remark. The man who called himself his rival was right about the entire tactic. True, but the headaches that come after it makes you finally decide to have some form of sympathy to the old lady and understand why she's a grouch sometimes. Gesturing with a thumb to himself, Konohamaru grinned and remarked, well, if it's such a pain in the ass then you should surrender the hat to me. After pausing briefly, Naruto let out a tiny smile. He sensed a flashback to his younger self in some way. That resolve, that spirit of freedom, that purity, that brightness. Naruto couldn't help but feel guarded towards the next generation at this point. Instead of getting sucked into the fight started by the older, he wanted them to live. He detested both this absurd circumstance and the idea that the younger generation would have to clean up the hateful mess they had left behind. To be honest, it was a dysfunctional way of life for them. Sadly, Konohamaru was not wearing his forehead protector. Naruto responded, flicking his index finger across his forehead. No can do, you little snot, not until you actually have what it takes to be one. Infuriated by Naruto's finger flick, the genin rubbed his forehead and uttered, just wait, boss. That title will be mine sooner than you expect. The elderly chef pointed to some of the people who were about to enter the establishment and respectfully bowed to the blonde who simply raised his hand to confirm their greeting. Yeah, being Hokage and whatnot, are you people finally about to order? I've got paying customers waiting in line. See? The chef said. Ayame just gave her eyes a sideways roll. Naruto thumped his chest and grinned, come on, old man, couldn't you just leave me alone for a minute with the kid here? I'm about to order anyway. Plus, you should consider it an honor in serving the Hokage. Yeah, where have I heard of that line before? Oh wait. You almost said it for the last 5 years or so that I've lost count. Tucci responded. The chef just nodded and smiled back at Naruto as he shrugged and took a seat to give him his order. Naruto scratched the back of his head and said, not really. If you were there, Most of the time it was dealing with eccentricities and annoying politics. Konohamaru exclaimed, "Man, you got to go to the summit, boss. It must have been so cool meeting up with the remaining greatest ninjas in this era." Abruptly, Naruto thought of the Mizukage. Her eagerness and flirtation would always be emblazoned on his head. When his order arrived, he shook his head to get out of his reverie and start eating, as the aroma of the freshly made noodles jolted him awake. With half-eaten noodles in his mouth, Naruto looked up as if considering it before saying, "Oh yeah, if you don't mind me asking, boss, why do you need my granddad's journals anyway?" "The old bat said that you two needed it for something." She didn't say anything after that, but now I'm dying to know. Konohamaru said in between slurps. "It's really about replacing some of the elders. They're getting old, and with a crisis waiting to happen, well, I don't think they could handle it." It appeared that Konohamaru understood the explanation. At that moment, an Anbu member wearing an eagle mask landed outside the little eatery. He hurriedly said to the leader, "Hokage Sama, Utatane Kaharu and Mitokado Homura had managed to run away." The Anbu knelt before him and bowed. With a gritted teeth, Naruto stepped outside right away, nearly letting the bowl of ramen fall into Konohamaru's lap. Luckily, Konohamaru managed to catch the bowl with his hands and turned to face outside. Naruto roared outside, practically vibrating Konohamaru's voice at the counter. It was like when Gigi was in a bad mood. Neutralize them as soon as you can. The last thing we need is the secrets of Konoha being left out in the open for anyone with bad intentions to this place. He would be extremely irritable, quiet, and shifty. He would also smoke more than usual. Naruto had seen the Anbu nod before it flickered away outside. The blonde swore to herself. It felt like the most reasonable thing to do in such an unexpected situation, though he wasn't sure what had suddenly come over him in that way. Although it's true that he didn't feel compelled to care for the two elderly people, the way he stated it and the abrupt, casual change in tone of voice commanded the elders' deaths. Naruto had just received the people's acknowledgement when he wanted to do it himself earlier when he was at the memorial stone, but he restrained himself from creating an unjustified amount of friction between them. Their fear resurfacing in him was the last thing he needed. No, he did not want that to occur once more. He was better than that. He would not submit to thoughts of retaliation for selfish gain. He was now Hokage, and he would uphold his perverted master's principles to the very end. At the very least, it was his tribute to the master who had taught and demonstrated a great deal more to him than just jutsu and fighting. However, as soon as he said those words, it was a wonderful feeling. He was overcome with a sense of being a monster. Naruto had returned inside, set his money down on the table, and turned around, leaving a half-finished bowl of ramen behind. He instantly forgot about his plan to lift his spirits with his favorite meal. It was not something he was hungry for, not anymore. While Naruto sprinted in the direction of the Hokage Tower, Tuchi and Konohamaru watched out for their best client. "Boss!" Konohamaru yelled at the blonde. When Naruto turned around, he saw his self-described rival give him a very serious look before smiling and saying, "Go get him." "Don't worry, I've got no intention of letting you do the tough jobs yet," Naruto told the child, grinning. As Naruto turned to walk away with a simple body flicker, Konohamaru gave him a perplexed look. Later in the afternoon, at Hokage Tower, Tsunade, who was still staring at Sarutobi's last journal, remarked, "You sure took your sweet time." Naruto sat down at his desk and cupped his head in his left hand. Tsunade looked up and grimaced as Naruto said, "Sorry, had a lot of run-ins with some of the people, and I just found out that the two elders had escaped and ran." "Now what?" "That's just another pile of problems you have to deal with. Right now, the clan heads are making their way towards here to talk about what is so important that you had to call for an emergency meeting with them. It's taken care of, Ba-chan. Now let's get this over with." After taking some documents from Naruto's desk, the two left the office and shut it. Upon reaching the conference room, they were welcomed by the sight of the clan heads, each seated in a chair and casting bored, complacent looks at the Hokage. Soon put her left elbow down on the table and said, well, it's been a while since there was a meeting of the clan heads right now." A smirk came out of her mouth as she touched her cheek. "I don't mind though, the missus was about to harp on me again and this saved me from another night of nagging," Shikaku said, slumped on his chair and looking bored. With a hearty laugh, Chusa seemed to have healed from his injuries from the battle with pain. He then raised an eyebrow and asked Inoichi, "What's eating you, Inoichi?" With a little fidget, the head of the Yamanaka clan remarked, Nothing, just tired from a day in the intel department. Shibi had said, adjusting his glasses and crossing his arms as he sat behind the table, but this does post a concern on what the Hokage is about to address in this meeting right now. We never had this meeting since the start of the Third Great Ninja War. Hyuga Hiyashi, sitting simply but dignifiedly in his seat, said, whatever the case, if such an event would require all the clan heads to discuss this matter with the Hokage, I'm sure it would be quite a situation, he has heard. Tsunade was seated to her left, and the Hokage, who had worn his hat earlier and placed it in front, as he did back then at the summit, was seated to her left. I don't like beating this around the bush too long, so I'll be blunt and get straight to the point. The blonde teenager was quiet for a moment and continued. Akatsuki has waged war against the 5 main shinobi nations in Iron Country. The leader of Akatsuki declared it during our meeting, who now has 7 of the 9 Biju. I don't know how to put this, but I think that bastard has something up his sleeve. An organization like that? I wouldn't put it past them to have some form of backing from a country or two. If they managed to stay hidden for quite some time and it took Jiraiya Sama's spy network to discover them, it just means that they're that good at deception. Even if it's 7 of the 9 Biju, we can't guarantee that they don't have a plan up their sleeve. Shikaku said and leaned forward on the table to face the leader of the Hokage. Tsume folded her arms across her body and winked. All the clan heads nodded in agreement when Tsunade said, right, if we suspect them to have a country backing them, then we should prepare for a full-scale war. With more emphasis on our seal masters, we need more than just a platoon of them if we want to win this war. The problem now would be what country Akatsuki has influence on. Tsume inquired, and Naruto suggested, crossing aim out of the equation right now. We can't just do a takeover of minor countries. All we could do is monitor. It's too dangerous to assume a country is under Akatsuki's control and we attack them as a prevention method. We're here to stop Akatsuki's influence in the world. We're not here to just win. Shibi gave a nod. I agree, it would be far too dangerous to enlarge Akatsuki's influence any further in the minor countries. A pre-emptive strike is unwise. Everyone in the room nodded as Hiyashi said, retaliation attacks are too risky. However, the current status of the village can attest to that. This is far too difficult to decide upon. I say we build up our forces here in the village, create new contingency plans, evacuation routes, and reposition our supply warehouses along with our supply routes not be intercepted this early on. Shuza rubbed the back of his head with his right palm. I will not risk it with the village as it is right now. Hiyashi said calmly, and Shibi agreed, and we cannot draw more flack to us this way, Hiyashi. Dono. We strike a minor country without as much as a word for it, then we can consider almost all of our allegiances with them null and void. But we have an alliance with the 5 main countries like this, along with Iron Country as well. Tsume said. May I remind you that even a smaller power, once collected with others, are stronger as one? Shibi responded, and Hiyashi sighed, HMPH, do not mix your clan philosophy in this. Fearing them is all but a trivial matter that is not in need of concern. I have to agree with Shibi on this one. Inoichi finally said something, and Shikaku nodded as the head went on. If you haven't noticed it, the minor countries outnumber us by 1 to 3 in population, along with the fact that they took up spaces between the 5 main countries. We can't relay messages if they are intercepted. We need some of them as allies. A display of power would only make them both fearful and hostile towards the alliance. To Tsume's surprise, Tsunade responded, the 5 main villages had formed an alliance. I don't need to say more. And what makes you think they could band together? Tsume asked. After a brief period of silence, Shuza said, I guess even bitter rivals can become allies if it's such a bad situation. It's decided then, we're going to be building our forces here. It keeps intel from leaking and we'll be prepared for a chance counter. Attack if Konoha is the first target. We don't know what the enemy will be doing, so we'll just have to mobilize our Chunin to gather information around. Tsunade. Chan, you'll be in charge on the village while I'm gone. I'm going to be doing some research in Myobokuzan after this. Naruto then handed Tsunade a scroll and said, give that scroll to Sakura, I'm giving her first solo mission to AIM. Once there, here's my instruction for her as I can't be here for a while and these letters need to be to their proper countries as soon as possible. I'm sorry to put this on you, but this is just something I have to do. Pork. Canine. A bird. A monkey. Gosh. Kachiyose no jutsu. Naruto yelled, hitting the table with his right hand. 2 toads had emerged from the smoke. Exploding table in front of him. Naruto said, Fukasaku. Sensei, I'm ready. And Fukasaku nodded. Hey. Wait a minute, how long am I going to put up with this? Tsunade exclaimed as she abruptly stood up. After giving Tsunade a brief glance, Naruto grinned and said, until I come back. That's for an indefinite time period, brat. I'm not putting up with the job for more than a month, it's 1 month too many. Ah, you worry yourself too much, Ba. Chan, you'll be fine. Besides, I have another toad summoner here in case there's an emergency. Naruto responded with a joke. Tsunade, frustrated, raised her hand and gestured to the documents on the table. That's not it, Naruto, this about the fucking workload. Naturally, Tsunade noticed Naruto's subtle eye roll as he said, please, you just don't want to sign those papers. Of course I don't. I don't want to mess with that thing again. And you're about as lazy as I am about paperwork. You just have a jutsu that can deal with it. Tsunade only muttered as Naruto put his hands on the back of his head and left, grumbling, whatever you say, Ba. Chan. If there was one thing that had not changed over his reign, it was his stubbornness as a mule. Fukasaku had leapt out and settled onto his shoulder. The wise old toad replied, there's a special dome built in Myobokuzen for you to use there. Naruto. Chan, are you really serious about this? This is different from training in your sage mode. The chances of you dying and setting the beast free are high. We've already discussed this, Fukasaku. Sensei, I'll bet everything I have, and I'll have to get stronger, no matter what, stronger than Sasuke, stronger than Madara, and if I have to, I'll have to be stronger than the Rakudo Sennin. Next, as he nodded to Fukasaku and shoulder bowed his backpack, Naruto cast a sharp gaze upward at the afternoon sky. A moment later, a cloud of smoke rose from the spot where Fukasaku and Naruto were standing. The master and apprentice vanished as the smoke cleared. Myobokuzen. He was in a stone dome when he felt the pull of the reverse summoning abruptly stop. Peering up, he saw a small aperture at the very top of the dome that revealed a section of the sky above. The book of Fuinjutsu that he had previously read was there in front of him, along with Fukasaku and Shima. He realized that he was only halfway through and that he still needed to read and study more, combine more seals, and develop sealing methods that required only his hands. Seals with writing on them were just the tip of the iceberg. With a roll of his black long sleeve, the blonde said, right, Fuinjutsu it is then for now. And sat down on the ground. For him, it was going to be another drawn out and challenging training regimen. But at least he knew this book would contain the solution he was looking for. When she finally arrived at the village that had raised the person in charge of Konoha's current status, it was quite the sight to behold. From a distance, AIM appeared to have a more urbane appearance than Konoha due to the pipes that climbed the buildings, giving the impression that the city was taken straight out of a steampunk novel. After a long trip, Sakura had finally settled down and was waiting for Konan. A short while ago, she had managed to contact Konan. As she entered, Konan said, I'm sorry I kept you waiting, Haruno. San. Her Akatsuki cloak had vanished, and it was now a simple dark shade. As the older woman sat down, Sakura raised her hands and said, It's no problem, Konan. San. Sakura handed Konan the scroll and said, Hokage. Sama wanted to talk to you about what happened in the summit concerning your former associates. Konan started reading the contents. The room fell silent, and Konan bowed her head and gently rolled the scroll. Konan closed her eyes gravely and said, So it's finally happened. I didn't think he would speed up his plan this much. She felt guilty that the masked man's plans had finally come to pass. Konan trailed off and looked outside. A flock of birds had flown up in the sky. Uchiha Madara, the more I think of that man, the more I realize how twisted he is based on his ideals. Sakura looked to her left, mirroring the gesture of the paper woman. Tell me, Sakura. San, how is Naruto? San faring these days? Asked Konan. Sakura responded, He's doing fine, he left after giving this letter to me to relay to you. Tsunade. Shisho mentioned that he was going to train and research on seals. He wants to end this war as soon as he can and he's doing what he feels what he needs to do. Konan suppressed a small smile and started folding papers on the table between them. You know, Naruto. San is like Yahiko in many ways, Konan said. Yahiko? Then, Konan turned to Sakura, who was staring at her bewildered. Oh, my mistake. Yahiko is Was a friend of ours, Conan said. Was? Conan said as she carried on folding paper. He was killed right before Nagato and I joined Akatsuki. He was a very dear friend of ours. I'm sorry. Conan continued folding the paper and showed her finished creation. Don't apologize, Haruno. San, it was not you that dealt the blow. Yahiko was the bravest out of the three of us. He was assertive, brash and took command of things when it got tough. If it wasn't for him, I don't know what would have happened to us when we were children. A crane made of paper. When he died, Nagato and I were devastated, but out of the two of us, Nagato was the one who never got over his death. Nagato looked up to Yahiko, even I did, but I realized sooner that I couldn't wallow in that sadness. When Nagato vowed to continue Yahiko's dream, I followed him. It wasn't the same, but we knew that it was what Yahiko wanted for us. Conan then responded to Sakura, who was now staring at the ground. In Nagato's perspective, he just wanted to protect those very few people that he considered friend. How about you, Sakura? San? I can tell that you have the same type of pain as I do. All the time you were looking on the floor and avoided looking at me, as if you know what it likes to lose a friend. Sakura let out a hollow chuckle and continued to gaze at the floor. It's funny how I found a kindred spirit in you, Conan. San. In a way, yes, but instead of being killed, he ran away from home. Sakura chose the silence to speak for her when Conan asked, Uchiha Sasuke, I presume? Sakura did not respond. Sakura bowed and put her hands over her head, saying, I don't want to come to a point that we would kill each other just to stop this madness. They had stuck by each other through good times and bad, and Sasuke had been a part of their lives. Those memories were still like pictures in her head. Conan asked, do you wish to save him, Haruno? San? Sakura looked at Conan silently for a moment before responding once more, feeling numb to Conan's question. Rewind. Clad in bandages and donning a hospital gown, a 12-year-old Naruto apologized to Sakura, saying, I couldn't reach to him. Shikamaru had told her as he walked back to his house, if Sasuke keeps doing these kinds of things on his own, then I can consider him a threat now, a threat that will take away something important from me. Holding a lighter that belonged to his former mentor, the man reminded him of the fate that befell the son of the third Hokage. I apologize, Sakura, but I can't forgive him. He's even more of a moron than Naruto. After this, what on earth will he achieve? Is he unaware of Akatsuki's desires? Kiba said. How much do you know? Do you have any idea how tough it was to deal with personally when you learned that your old best friend had joined that bastard's group? I want to leave this village that keeps putting me in a holding pattern. Be ready to pay a price if you wish to obstruct me. Sakura bolstered her determination. Was saving Sasuke truly what she wanted? Did she really want to save Sasuke, the man who had deserted them and nearly stabbed her in the chest if it weren't for their captain? Conan questioned, who will you save him from? Sakura glanced up at the woman with blue hair, while Conan gave her a serious look as he awaited a response. Sakura, I'm grateful. Sakura eventually answered, finally managing to get the words out of her mouth. I want to save him and smack some sense into him. I want to save him from Madara, save him from himself, make him realize that leaving us behind was a horrible choice in the end. Conan turned around and picked up her scroll, grinning. The previous crane grew to the size of a pigeon in a matter of seconds. Conan closed the scroll inside by drawing a basic storage seal at its side. Then rise up, Haruno. San. Follow me and I shall aid you in your trial. Don't fear. I already gave my answer to the Hokage. I will only grant you what I can, but rest assured, I will teach you everything that I know. It may or may not be enough for you to do anything good, but if it means you do everything in your power for the sake of your loved ones, then I will support you. Sakura abruptly got up from her seat and cast a questioning glance at Conan. Why would you? She asked. Conan bowed her head and a simple grin on her face. Because you are like me, Sakura, yet unlike me, you still have those two in your life. They are still living. If there is one thing that I have learned from Naruto, San, based on mere observation, is that as long as there is life, there will always be hope. So don't lose your determination yet, Haruno. San. Sakura grinned at that, at last relieved that she would have an opportunity to save Sasuke and free Naruto from the weight of his pledge to her. She will be the one to impart some common sense to Sasuke if Naruto is unable to do so. Even in the event that it meant she would be facing Sasuke. Sakura cleared her head and went outside to follow Konan. As Konan strolled through the streets of Aim, the pink-haired Konoha shinobi, who had observed the village while the Rain residents gawked at her, accompanied her. Konan appeared calm and collected. It's been a while since they've seen foreign shinobi, much less from Konoha. Ninja from Konoha tend to remind them of unpleasant times, the Angel of God said, glancing at Sakura. A small child was staring at Sakura, and all she could do was nod and smile. The child smiled back and ran off. Many people greeted Konan and bowed, acknowledging her as the Angel of God, as they strolled on. Unlike Tsunade, who commanded with all of her might and raised spirits with fiery words, Sakura could literally feel the respect and admiration for the woman coming in waves. Konan's was quiet, soft, and exuded a sense of peace and comfort. It reminded me of pure water or a light breeze. After what happened to Nagato, do they still consider him a god? Sakura inquired. Sakura answered that question, but Konan never gave her a look. The current people of AIM believe that Nagato is a god, all because he did the unthinkable, he defeated Hanzo the Salamander. Nagato saved his followers from the despair that Hanzo brought. It is only natural that they look up to him, who has defeated someone they view as invincible, be considered a higher being. A god among men, that is what many people of AIM viewed Nagato. He is their ideal, and it will take a long time for them to forget that sentiment. It was best to let them continue on in this view, let them think what they wish, as long as they don't tarnish Nagato's name. Konan continued. Sakura remarked, I see, so you wanted them to maintain that belief for a while in order to not distraught them of such a strong belief in pain, and Konan nodded. Yes, only discord awaits those whose beliefs are crushed. Let them think like it for a while. I would not dissuade them. Sakura was aware of Konan's convictions as they rippled through her. Sakura sensed that the woman in front of her was adamant about the people who were important to her and those in her immediate vicinity. Konan decided that she would stay strong not for herself but rather for the people that Nagato and Yahiko left behind, even though it had hurt her that Nagato had died and was left all alone. Sakura thought to herself, but me. I feel like an absolute coward. She realized how much her indecision had hurt Naruto, and how strange it was that it took Sai of all people to realize how much the three of them, Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruto, managed to hurt each other indirectly. Sakura sensed the hatred she harbored for herself rising to the surface and mocking her actions toward Naruto, herself, and everyone else. Stop lying to yourself. You and I both know there is no chance of persuading Sasuke to return. It's become more trouble than it's worth. A voice inside of her told her. Sakura scowled and lowered her head. Are you still pursuing his affections? Do you still have feelings for him? Remember what he did to you? To Naruto? To our group? It went on, ruthlessly haunting her with flashes of their second meeting just as Sasuke was about to sever her throat with a sword. It felt like there was never enough, never more than enough, after all the sacrifices and hard work we had done. Sakura clenched her gloved hands together and said, it's time to change that prioritized goal. She was correct, saving Sasuke was important. She wanted to be strong now, though, not for Naruto or Sasuke. Sakura steeled her resolve, thinking, but for myself. She would fight for everything that matters to her, not just Sasuke anymore. She would no longer pursue him. At the city's edge, Konan stopped and turned to face Sakura, who was staring at her with a serious expression. With a small smile, Konan reached into her cloak to retrieve a scroll. Konan then took a small piece of paper from her hand and gave it to Sakura, saying, this is one of the technique scrolls that was gathered during the years that Akatsuki was still composed of 9 members and gathered techniques first before the capture of Jinchuriki. Kakuzu used this technique to make his body as solid as steel. Sakura nodded as she took the little paper. It was an elemental affinity test. She had witnessed Kakashi put Naruto through the same test, so she silently transferred her chakra to the paper in the same way that Naruto had. When she noticed that the paper had crumbled to dust, she felt herself become pale. On the other hand, Konan grinned, it was exactly what she had in mind. After 3 months, Myobokuzen. It had been extremely taxing. The self-training he had done had left him completely exhausted each night. But with a day's rest in between, he had amassed months or even years of experience in a single training day. The training with his clones was successful. He could now perform Fuinjutsu without using a stroke and, in theory, seal away a massive object with a few quick motions of his hands. But this is his next challenge. He took off his Haori and flak jacket, closed his eyes, and stood in the center of the dome where the only beam of light that was present fell upon him. The scroll toad was standing tall in front of him with its arms crossed. Maintain your molding and concentrate. Without a third medium, you will be the one to pick up the slack. You'll act as the controller and the output. Once I turn the seal open, you're on your own. Just make sure that once you direct the chakra, your natural energies would be gathered by then. You'll only have one moment. Do you remember the seals that Jiraiya weaved? Naruto gave a nod. His brow was wet with sweat as he grimaced at the challenging task. He was about to start when he heard the toad scroll mention that he had reached the pinnacle of his molding. Naruto simply nodded in agreement. As soon as Naruto felt the chakra start to flow through him, he started to control the sudden, seemingly uncontrollable flow of chakra by using his hands to weave seal after seal. Wave after wave pulverized the shore, and it felt like he was smashing into himself and the ocean waves. With every move of the hand seals, he found himself nearing his breaking point. He could feel the Yuki beginning to seep into his system like a dam suddenly rupturing. He completed the final seal, then stopped right away and started to gather natural energy as the chakra of the fox began to flow through his coils. He was left with no choice but to suppress the sudden flow of demon chakra in his mind. He winced as the temperature abruptly increased. You think you can force me to submit and assist you, human? Inquired a deep, malevolent, snoopy, and patronizing voice. Turning around, Naruto saw a brass gate the size of any structure taller than 10 stories. A tiny piece of paper with the word seal written on it, appearing to be the lock keeping the cage closed, was located in the center. 2 sets of blood. Red eyes peered out from within, both as menacing and sinister as the smile that revealed its sharpened teeth. Below its murky, shallow waters, red miasma started to dance. As it rose to the surface, it transformed into bubbles and started to crawl out of the cage in Naruto's direction. A chuckle burst out of the cage as it looked down at its owner. You, who struggle to find what is and what isn't, you whose own morals are now blurred by your position, where your choices lead you to doubt yourself more that lead to a path of weakness, you, who cannot grasp the fact that one of your own betrayed you. After the Kyuubi's remark, Naruto growled and carried on talking to the blonde. Pathetic, truly such a worthless flesh bag that stands before me, I should kill you now. At least it would be more of an act of mercy rather than cruelty. As the waters rising from beneath his feet and the miasma and red bubbles crawling towards him, Naruto kept his enraged gaze fixed on the monstrous fox. Foolish mortal, for you to attempt to subdue me, I give you credit. None have been so courageous or foolhardy enough such as you to attempt this, especially one who has not gained the ability to control me, but your folly ends now. Know that you shall never see the light of day again, and I shall be free of this damnable prison. Silent ripples of water appeared on Naruto's knees as he walked slowly towards the cage, grinning. Keep telling that to yourself, you stupid fox. I'm here to finally show you who the boss around here is. And all in ill manner, I'll show you that even an insignificant human like me can surpass even the expectations above the norm. Nature isn't static, the sage chakra said, as the red bubbles and miasma gave way and the red chakra finally slipped through the gaps of the bars. The Kyuubi laughed. Interesting, you make it sound like you're sure of yourself. The only question is, can you, actually? Can you control me? Can you use my power? Can you withstand me? The monster lifted its left front claw and swung it down toward Naruto. That is only wishful thinking. I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune, I am chaos incarnate, with a single wisp of my tail. I cause death and destruction in my wake. No one will control me anymore, no one. Not you and certainly not those damnable Uchiha anymore. With a violent ripple, the first shockwave pushed the liquid up from the enormous claw as it splashed down the rising waters. The Kyuubi looked down at Naruto and said nothing. With both hands raised, Naruto had stopped the claw. He was squatting and struggling due to the Kyuubi's overwhelming power. Now, you interest me more, brat. That simple attack should have rendered you unconscious and allowed me to take over your body. Glancing around, the Kyuubi noticed that the water levels were once more rising. As he spoke to the blonde who was struggling from his claw, it laughed merrily. You do understand, don't you, Gaki? As time passes, the key to your seal is slowly turning it open. The gradual rising of the water is proof of that. Every time the water rises, you succumb to me. The paper seal that acts as a lock is slowly peeling away. By the time the water reaches the level on your chest, I would have consumed you completely. In between heaves, Naruto answered, yeah? So what? Naruto asked himself, am I supposed to be afraid? Am I supposed to fall down and accept my fate? As he abruptly started pushing the enormous claw. Pushing the claw away slowly, inch by inch, second by second, Naruto said, I've thrown my fear away when I promised myself to not back down on any fight. I've fought my way, tooth and nail, and more than once, I showed everyone that I'm not just an idiot from a no-name clan. Impossible isn't a word for me, it doesn't even exist in my vocabulary. Grinning, Naruto said, now, I've become the Hokage, the strongest in my village, the man at the top. I've done it, I made it here, and I'll be damned if you ever take that dream away from me. I'll only stop when I want to. Not even you can keep me. Before tossing the claw aside and bending down. With a sudden jump, Naruto vanished into thin air and materialized right next to the Kyuubi's long mouth. Naruto thrust his fist directly into the fox's face, heaving it back. The fox reacted as soon as the punch struck him, heaving its head slightly to one side. I see you can throw a decent punch. But it still won't be enough. The nine-tailed beast howled inside its cage in a berserker. Like trance, slashing down below with its forepaws to attack Naruto, who was still in midair. The Kyuubi laughed from its standing position as it said, seeing nothing to replace it. He had met the brunt of the attack head-on and felt the weight of each of its claws on his shoulders, throwing him down on the waters below, splashing in it in a tremendous show of force. In the end, I still am far more superior than you, whelp. Nature deems it so, and it shall always be obeyed. No ordinary human could ever control me. 3 geysers suddenly erupted from the depths below, indicating Naruto's life, and 3 clones, each with a hand forming a massive Rasengan, descended upon the nine-tailed fox. The Kyuubi dodged, hopping from side to side until none of the clones managed to miss him. The nine-tailed fox sneered even more as it used its paws and tail to effectively dispel the clones. That is, until the actual one leapt out of the water beneath its exposed underbelly, formed a full, massive Rasengan, and struck the Kyuubi's abdomen in question. The attack's force sent the Kyuubi flying, where it struck the mindscape's metallic and stone. Like roofs while yowling in agony. With a massive splash and an appearance of rain inside as the water descended, the monster fell onto the much higher level of water below. The Kyuubi made a full recovery right away, with its wounds healing at an exponential rate. The Kyuubi smiled. In more than a century, no one had ever been able to deal him something like that. This has been the gift I have given you so long ago. Yet you are still this weak. I gave it to you because I knew you would be prone to injury, your reckless attitude was your downfall. And I knew that I would be forced to share this ability to you if only I were to survive before finally getting my freedom. Then, using its left forepaw, the Kyuubi used its claws to bite the blonde once more, but this time in a sideways motion. When Naruto realized what was about to happen, he leapt to avoid it, only to have the monster give him a severe headbutt as it literally crashed into him. The strike knocked him sideways and toward a wider section of the iron gates. Naruto struck the brass gate with a blow that broke bones, and he could feel the agony tearing through his body. Even though it was only his mind, he wouldn't get too hurt, but the knowledge that he was still experiencing pain stunned him as he fell straight down the wall into the water below. Your ideas are so delusional as the belief of that dead master of yours. After coming to his senses, Naruto growled as he emerged from the water, looking at the monstrous fox with utter hatred. He was both wet and furious. Don't insult the perverted hermit's ideals like that. Fool. It is natural for man to kill their fellow men. Men are, by nature, inherently evil. Greed fills their souls like a despot of sickness and virulence. It spreads to each human's heart, their pride, their lust, their gluttony, hate and envy on their own kind like a disease that can never be cured. Nothing is worth saving these abominations from themselves. They were never in danger to begin with. Shut up. You may be an ancient being, but you don't even know how humans think. You just judge us by the way you see in your observations. If you're a higher being, then your views on us lowly creatures can kiss my ass. You don't know how to be human. You will never learn how to be one. With a shout, Naruto bounded forward even faster than before and leapt to his feet. As it swooped low, the Kyuubi opened its enormous maw and tried to bite Naruto, but instead of receiving water, Naruto instinctively landed on top, creating another group of 3 clones. The Kyuubi rolled to one side, determined to crush its opponent. Both Naruto and his clones leapt, and each of them changed into a weapon of any kind. Everything in the vicinity collapsed as wisps of chakra started to gather inside the gates of the Kyuubi, the line separating humans and Biju. Beyond Naruto's consciousness, the evil chakra gushing out like a waterfall caused Fukasaku and Shima to shudder at the uncontrollably strong chakra surge outside. They gazed at Naruto, who was standing in the center of the sealing chamber on all fours, his red chakra cloak appearing and vanishes simultaneously, the longer he struggled. As he bled down trickles of blood all over his body, staining the ground with his own bodily fluid, his skin was beginning to break down and reform. Naruto gripped and held his throat, rolling onto the ground in agony as he roared and growled. Shima yelled from her position, "Endure it, Naruto. Chan. Don't let that monster consume you." Fukasaku replied, "He can't hear ya, Ma. You're just wasting your breath. Pa, why are you always antagonizing on everything that I do?" Shima complained. Fukasaku held it with his left hand and shook his head to his end. Her spouse said, "It's because most of what you do is always pointless." "Oh, like how my household kitchen chores are meaningless." Shima responded, clearly hurt. "Only when it's Water Strider's night. I told you to get rid of the hind legs. You know how much they irritate my gums. Then you should remind me earlier. I keep reminding you 2 hours before cooking the things. You just forget about it. And you call the great sage a forgetful old coot. What? I am not old, you old coot. Who are you calling an old coot, you old coot?" The elders started bickering like a married couple, and Gamakichi, who was watching from the farthest point of the sealing chamber, sighed. The two turned to face the son of the frog boss, and Fukasaku answered, Elders, how much time has Naruto allowed us before finally interfering with the ritual?" "Naruto has given us as much as 15 minutes, those minutes are the most crucial part since it is the maximum amount of time Naruto has on his Sage Mode on his own." Shima went on to say, "Sage Mode may bring a human closer to the level of a Biju, but it does not guarantee that you can stand toe-to-toe with one. The mere thought of a human taking on a tailed beast is utterly ridiculous. Yet, the thought of controlling one is even more." Fukasaku grinned and nodded. "Much as we hate to do it, before the fox cloak manifests itself into the fifth tail state, we are going to have to kill Naruto. He said that if he fails, then this is the only option left for us. Not only would the Kyuubi be prevented to escape, it would destroy Madara's plan." Gamakichi swallowed hard as he saw Naruto, who appeared to be a feral. He was crouching on all fours, growling, and digging his hands deeply into the earth. Still, more and more chakra was being transferred by the Toad Scroll. "No, not done yet, there's still more of the Yin chakra left. Accumulate it and control it, Naruto. Don't waver." The blonde's only response was a savage growl, and as a dome-shaped sheath of chakra shield started to envelop him, Naruto turned to face the shield and started pounding and swiping the ethereal wall to break free. Inside Naruto's head, staring down at the blonde's slumped form by the gate, the Kyuubi bellowed, "See what lies before you, as the greatest of the tailed beasts. I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune, cower and realize the insignificance of your own existence compared to mine." With a sly crimson gaze, it assessed the blonde lying on the ground and created a foxy, toothy smile of its own. Before Naruto, who was now standing steadily by the gate with the water level inside reaching his abdomen, it laughed a little before he began to breathe heavily. Between gasps for breath, Naruto managed to ask, "Didn't you hear me earlier?" Naruto remained upright, tensing his legs. "I've lost that ability when I realized that if I can't be the one to bite the kunai, who will?" Naruto said to the Kyuubi, his eyes brimming with resolve. "I threw away my fear long ago. I keep staring at my back and I see all the people that rely on me, they're counting on me. Because of that, I am not letting them down. If you push me down, I'll just stand up again and stare back at you. It's my pride, my will." The blonde stood miraculously in the middle of the growing sea of chakra that was slowly eating away at his mind like a poison while the Kyuubi looked down on her. Its eyes narrowed to look at Naruto closely, but it didn't say anything. Then, it chuckled darkly. "Pride is the downfall of all creatures, your pride is your weakness, brat. It will be your doom." The pool of water was getting closer to Naruto's chest as he grinned back. "Then was it pride that struck you down 15 years ago?" Was it your pride that told you to face the Shinigami head-on? The blonde was given the evil Kyuubi's snarl and growl. You will pay for that mockery, brat. Naruto's grin turned into a grimace as he started to clutch his shoulders due to the sudden spike in pain the red chakra was causing him. The red chakra started to bubble on the water's surface as it inflated and popped over each other. For a moment, his knees felt like rubber as he nearly fell headfirst into the water. He raised his gaze to the demon fox's scowling face. The fox had released a powerful chakra, and it appeared that over time, the gradual expansion of the chakra pool from Kyuubi to his own was overwhelming him. At this point, the yin chakra of the Kyuubi had effectively bonded with its yang counterpart and was gradually attempting to overwhelm his own chakra. With a weary expression, Naruto looked up at the enormous red kitsune, which opened its massive mouth and descended to devour Naruto whole. Grassland. The majority of the smaller nations began to feel afraid of the situation after the 5 most potent hidden villages banded together to form the 5-village alliance, which was supported by Iron Country. Nothing was worth the trouble of working with an old enemy who committed atrocities in their territory, according to the majority of the smaller nations who harbored resentment towards a village that one of the main shinobi countries had severed from their alliance. It was that basic fact that had caused divisions between the 5 main villages and the others. They wanted nothing to do with the alliance. What had transpired to compel Konoha, Kiri, Suna, Kumo, and Iwa to make such a significant move? The daimyos of the smaller nations and the chiefs of their individual villages were plagued by a terrible question, with everyone's attention focused on such a huge crisis. Who would stand up to them? Slowly but surely, it became apparent that the minor countries were completely exposed to invasion by the alliance at any time. It was terrifying and would have knocked any minor nation's leader to the ground in desperation. Fear soon reared its ugly and spiteful head over the people living in the smaller countries as paranoia took hold. Nevertheless, a few of the smaller nations discovered that they possessed 2 crucial elements that the larger nations lacked: the links that enabled coordination and communication among the nations. The main nations have communication problems. Usually, messages had to be sent across 1 or more countries in order to get from one village to another. The second benefit they discovered was that each of their ninja villages housed more people than any of the major nations, making up a larger population overall. They now understood that, armed with those advantages, they could oppose the alliance, that is, if they could get behind a common front. At that point, every small nation started clamoring for alliances, political allegiances, interracial marriages, and other arrangements that would secure their nation's future. Then, it had come to this. A summit was held independently on grass country with the participation and willingness of all political figures from minor countries, comprising over 80% of them, including daimyos and village leaders. Even though it wasn't what they had anticipated, it was still sufficient to give them leverage against the alliance. The host village leader declared, "This meeting of the Federation of Minor Countries has now come to order." The man didn't appear particularly intimidating because he was dressed in the traditional shinobi uniform, with a dark-colored long-sleeve shirt and pants, a teal-green vest that marked the village's identity, and a scarf and haori that represented his position as the village leader. He adjusted his glasses and turned to face his daimyo, handing him a piece of paper. The leader cleared his throat and said, "We don't know what has occurred that forced the alliance to suddenly happen like this. Public statements mentioned that they want to counter the Akatsuki threat, a reason which, some of the minor villages didn't want to participate, particularly, Aim and Taki, Waterfall. But we don't know the true agendas that they are making." One of the daimyos got up and said, "That's it? That's the reason they created an alliance? To counter a mercenary workforce? I may not know much about shinobi and their line of work, but to have such a weak excuse for forming an alliance, it's sending all the warning signs all around me. Being situated near a very aggressive village like Kumo is far too close for comfort. I will not stand by and let my country be dissolved." The voice reverberated throughout the room. "Then how about you take my proposal then?" The leaders and daimyos all turned to face the unknown individual as they searched the room for their presence. Everyone in the room became alert at that moment. The heads of their individual villages stood and scowled at the stranger who had materialized out of thin air. The man calmly strode towards the large circle of leaders who were all staring at him warily as the hem of his black robes flapped from the gust of wind that he had appeared in. Beneath his spiral orange mask, Madara grinned, staring at each of the leaders in his immediate vicinity with a squinted Sharingan eye. Every member's fear increased at the sound of his every step, and they were all on edge. All of the daimyos cowered in their seats as one of the members uttered, "Black robes as dark as the starless night and clouds adorned with the color of blood. There's no mistaking it. It's Akatsuki. Like I said, I have an offer that you might possibly be interested in." Madara went on. Several of the members appeared doubtful all of a sudden. One of them mockingly exclaimed, "What could Akatsuki possibly have to give us? Minor mercenary forces whose members have dwindled down have no place within the workings of this world." Everyone nodded except for the man wearing a mask. Another said, "You are the reason that the alliance happened. I dare say we shall not make deals with the devil." Some of the village leaders scowled more deeply at Madara's question, "What if I tell you that you have a large chance to overpower the alliance with our help? A weight to tip the scales, so to speak? What could this man in front of them possibly offer to give them an advantage over the most powerful villages?" Madara received the answer he had been hoping for in silence. Madara declared with a sense of total confidence, "I have 7 of the 9. Tailed beast with me, and with my ability, I can control them to a certain extent." Those in his immediate vicinity were immediately drawn in. After that, everyone mumbled to one another while thinking about the proposal made by the Uchiha Patriarch. Doubts and trust were circulating through the room like a silent whirlwind. Madara continued as he was standing in the middle of every member that followed. "The alliance has forces amassing by the thousands, and each village is notorious for the quality, manpower and resources that they each possess. Even if this federation possesses an army that is more than the total number of forces that the alliance have, it would be utterly useless against the caliber of any ninja coming from one of the villages. Numbers play little value once the enemy have weapons and abilities that can wipe out an area in a matter of seconds." This was followed by one of the leaders saying, "Of course, lending us such creatures of power is by no means free. What is your aim? Straight to the point, I see? Very well," chuckled Madara. Then Madara raised his hands and made the number 2 with his fingers, saying, "I just want the Rokudame Hokage and the Raikage's brother, preferably alive." To the man in the middle's disbelief, one of the leaders whistled. "Those are pretty high-profile people for a mercenary group to obtain. What are you really after?" Madara responded with a straightforward statement, "They are Jinchuriki, hosts to the remaining tailed beast not in my collection. I am merely a collector. I'm fascinated about the mysticism that the Biju entail. Not only that, but using such destructive forces for military purposes is tantamount to madness and genocide. I don't want it to fall into greedy hands." With the exception of the man standing in front of them, everyone in the room exchanged uncertain glances. Everyone appeared uncomfortable at Madara's suggestion. "I know you don't seem to particularly trust me about what is coming out of my mouth, but how about I offer my services free of charge on the first trial?" Madara questioned. "And when would that be?" inquired one of the daimyos. Madara grinned under his mask once more and had them under control. 3 months from now, I will test it out on the former plains of Wood Country, just south of Earth Country. Decide then, if you want Akatsuki's services or not. Just remember after that, war is declared on any nation that houses Akatsuki. That means that any nation that doesn't go with the alliance shall be declared as either hostile or suspicious. You have been warned." As they made decisions about the situation that was presented to them, one of the village leaders remarked, "Very well. As of this moment, the Federation shall declare war on the alliance and all nations that will oppose the said governing body." Madara thought his plans were coming together nicely. Myobokuzan, Chamber of Sealing. In addition to being gasping for air and nearing the peak of his heart, Naruto was also on the last few legs of chakra and his sage mode was about to expire. Pathetic, miserable, weak. All of these traits belong to you. You do not deserve my power, no human ever could. Let the world know, as of right now, the Kyuubi shall once again roam this world in the path of blood. Once more, the Kyuubi descended upon Naruto with its mouth wide open, prepared to devour him. As the waters were about to consume him, Naruto could feel the last of the sage chakra leaving his body. The Kyuubi surged toward him like a tsunami, sweeping through the waters like a maelstrom as the water gushed out of its path and splashed around. But the Kyuubi stopped just inches from Naruto's position. Panting, he looked to the waters below as the Kyuubi retreated. Slowly, he approached the frozen form of the Kyuubi no Yuko, and Naruto studied its constricted eyes, which were filled with a deranged mix of surprise and rage. "I would prefer if you hadn't used my gift to you, Naruto." "Kun." Naruto turned around and was taken aback to see that Uchiha Itachi was the one approaching him at a leisurely pace. "You trying to confront the Kyuubi finally mean that Sasuke has not yet returned to Konoha and has been told lies by Madara. It is such a terrible fate that you will have no other choice but to fight him." After a moment of contemplation and introspection, Itachi moved forward to touch the Kyuubi by its nose. "My gift to you is made up of 2 parts, this is the first one." I impart to you at first the essence of the Uchiha's spiritual energies. Some of my chakra has already leaked into your system before when you were under my genjutsu back then. This will be the final jumpstart to produce the same chakra as did the Rakudo Sennin, albeit on a much larger scale. This would allow you to control the Kyuubi far easier than any other human has come to possess, even more so than Uchiha Madara himself and the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. Latching onto the nine-tailed fox, chains had abruptly emerged from the depths below, instantly subduing it. The kitsune was surrounded by contempt as it was restrained to the ground and let out a painful yip. The Kyuubi first glanced at its host, then at the Uchiha. The second part of my gift will be for a later time. Welcome to your second coming, Uzumaki Naruto, or should I say, Rakudo Sennin. That instantly caused Naruto to be released from the cage and abruptly return to the outside world. External environment. The barrier that had encased the Hokage's feral form began to dissipate as the small, black ball did. Gamakichi, Fukasaku, and Shima were all tense as the ball broke apart in a surge of chakra, wondering who would emerge from that opaque layer of chakra. Which would it be, Naruto or the Kyuubi in miniature? Naruto was standing there, kneeling on the ground and gazing up at the sky. Blood was streaming from every crevice in his body, and he was wearing a grim expression as he descended slowly to the ground. Naruto thumped lightly and turned to face the night sky, which was covered in stars and the soft light of the moon in the middle of the dome. Before unconsciousness took hold, Naruto had one final thought before his eyes slowly closed and he felt the arms of sleep embracing him. Thank you, Itachi. A tiny smile slipped from his bleeding lip. He had declared victory over the hideous fox, which many have feared their entire lives, for this night.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.